Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Yo. Yeah, right there. You okay?
A little bit. I'm always excited about coming on.
There you go.
How you guys all doing tonight? Hopefully great. It was an interesting week weather-wise. It's certainly, I think fall is here. I have to say fall is here. It's in
Yeah.
here. Welcome to Fishing Canada Live. We have a very special
Fishing
program.
Canada Live with Ange and Pete. That's what you made that up. Come on, let's use it. If you're gonna write it up, brand it. Let's.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here, okay, why don't you redo that opening? Just
welcome to Fishing Canada Live with Ange and Pete. No, sorry. Welcome to Fishing Canada Live with Pete and Ange. Since I'm saying it.
We're having a power struggle here, obviously.
No, you can have it, buddy. It's Ange and Pete. No problem.
All right, great program. Before we get to all the ins and outs, just a quick couple of things. First of all, I just want to remind people again, apparently I'm not doing it enough to get on fishingcanada.com, enter the Mercury Marine Princecraft Boat Motor Trailer Contest, which is quickly coming to an end. It's hard to believe, eh? It's all. We are going to be awarding.
Who's giving you hell for that, for not reminding people? Who's I want to know.
Jordan, Mike, the Countess is even on me. The Countess is on me.
Okay, well, you better get at it then, buddy.
The Countess is on you.
Mike, you can push, kind of say, "Okay, boys, I'll try that." But when the Countess hits you hard, you gotta fight back. So
anyway, so I when that order comes down the food chain, I stand at attention. Okay, so here we go. So don't forget, fishingcanada.com. We have two separate contests going on. For those of you who may not know, by the way, hi everybody, the usuals on there. Nice, just having a quick peek here because for some reason it's not coming on pre-show. It doesn't come on until we go live.
Yeah, like the boys told us, Facebook seems to be doing their little changeover of whatever they have to do, just to be Facebook and be different and be cool and be
well, it's too late to be cool. I should have trimmed this beard this morning.
Right from the shoulders up. Trim it hard. Hurry hard.
Where was I? Fishingcanada.com. The two contests. Did you just hit your mic or something there? Wow, that was bizarre. We have two contests. We have the Princecraft Outboard Mercury Motor Trailer Boat Motor Package that is going to be given away, I believe, the 15th of December. Don't forget, you can get entries in. I don't know how many days between now and the 15th of December, but you can get a ballot in the box every day between now and then.
Plus bonuses. Plus your bonuses.
Thank you.
Work it properly. You know what I mean?
See? Work it like it's yours. You know what I'm saying?
It is your own.
Exactly. And the other contest while you're there, because there's no charge, nothing like there's no cost.
Gas money to get there, does it?
And
no
it's
fuel
free.
money.
It's free. No charge.
Exactly.
I like it. You also need to enter that, and that's for a Mercury 2.5 motor, of which we have two left, if I'm not mistaken, to give away.
And if you have problems there, folks, just a reminder here to go to the frequently asked questions portion, because that might be able to solve your issue. And if not, then contact support. I mean, the boys are there to help you out. So there's two ways. A lot of times the frequently asked questions will fix you up and get you going. So check that out too, please.
Hold it here. I got to check this. I got it. Say, and do you shave your eyebrows? Well, thank you for asking. You know what? I mentioned that, I don't know, a couple of months ago. We were doing one of these things, and I said, "Oh, nobody mentioned my eyebrows being shaved tonight or trimmed tonight." And somebody got rude with me. Somebody said, "I thought this was supposed to be a fishing show. What are you doing talking about eyebrows?" Well, thank you for talking about my eyebrows.
Who said that? Who made the comment? I got to see who's that.
Facebook user.
Facebook user. Well, Facebook user. When Angelo does trim his eyebrows, it's either with a head trimmer or a weed whacker. So
okay, he's right. He's right. Except for, and I don't mind sharing this with people. So the lovely Countess, my wife, and my oldest daughter Jocelyn have both, and I don't use this word in a negative manner, but have both been nagging me. Not that the Countess nags, okay? I'm not suggesting that at all. But in lieu of any other way to describe it. They've both been nagging me lately, saying that I should not be doing that because it makes it worse. They want me to go in and see one of those eye plucking people, the whatever they call them, to do it.
Pluckers.
What do you think? I should go?
Fig pluckers.
Yeah, a plucker. Yeah. They want me to go see a plucker.
Big plucker.
And I said, well, no, I feel uncomfortable. And not only that, but it's gotta hurt. And so to kind of get me over that, they both were plucking my eyebrows the other night.
Did they use linesman's pliers to get them out, or what did they have to use?
No, but what I did say is, hey, I appreciate that, but can you just go and do my ears while you're there?
Hey, no kidding, eh? The ears, always everything else.
Why is that? Why is that hair starts growing everywhere where you don't want it to grow when you reach a certain age? Like
we have more real estate without hair than with hair, right? When you're older, like that. It's like, what the hell? Is there any skin left? How the hell did you get on this stuff? Oh, Facebook guy did that. Okay, Facebook. It was Ted Putnam. It was Ted Putnam that asked you that. The Facebook user says it was Ted Putnam. Who responded to you last and got rude last time, maybe. I don't know. But
also ask Pete to turn down his glare off his head when two hey guys or something. I don't know.
Okay, there we go.
There. I told you looked a little pale.
You did. I'm going to turn it down right now. Excuse me. Let's see what happens here.
So anyways, where was I? Yes. Okay. So the contest, we need to get people getting into the fishingcanada.com contest. All right. Between now and the end of these two, we need, there you go. That's a little better, I think. I don't know. Let me have a look at you.
No.
You're still glaring. Like, I don't know what's the matter with you.
It's because the sun follows me, right? The sun, it's just like, I have this, Linus on Peanuts there, he had the rain cloud, or whoever that was, but I got the sun. It follows me around. It says, Peter, you should all go fishing today. No
if I recall, your nickname not that long ago was Pigpen. I think
that's what it was, Pigpen, wasn't it?
That's who you're referring to, and it had nothing to do with the sun. Trust me.
Girls here at the office, just let everybody know, Pig Boy was my nickname. Piggy and Pig Boy was my nickname, and it wasn't for dirt under my nails. I had
although you have plenty of
language. I had a bit of language issue every now and then. So
anyway, God, we're getting off track here tonight. Okay, so we got that. You told them about the frequently asked questions, so we got that covered. We're going to have the usual segments on this show. The Fish Talk with the Doc will be on later on. Now, Fish du Jour is not going to be into a cooking segment this evening with Antonio, but I believe he's going to come on and show us the sharpening technique.
Yes, sir.
I am dying to see.
Me too, because I know I'm doing it wrong. I know I'm doing it wrong. And I got a piece of crap sharpener at home. I know he's going to give me help for that. And so I'm just going to be quiet and listen and then go buy some stuff after that. So.
We're also going to have a very special guest this evening, all the way. You made it big when you start going international with your show. So this evening we'll be joined by our good friend, Ross Honey from England, Hampshire, England.
Oh, England, you say?
Hampshire, England. So he'll be bringing a little bit of royalty to the program. Maybe I could talk to him about the Countess, the issues I'm having with the Countess, because if anybody would understand that, would be
Ross Honey from England. There's more of a Duchess, isn't it, from England? Or like,
no, I think they have Countesses. We'll find out. But let's be honest about it. He's going to be the closest thing we've ever had on the program to like a royal
true
emissary, right? In fact, he's the royal carp.
We haven't had Carol Caputo on yet, so that she will have trumped him, of course, when Carol does come on. But until then,
I don't know. Really? Ross will be joining us very shortly, as will later on in the program Will Machette, who calls himself.
Speaking of royalty, eh? Speaking of royalty, what does he call himself?
Professor of carpology.
No, of carp linguists.
No, he's carpologist. I've changed them. I've changed them already. The reason we got all these carp experts on is because of our poll question this week, which I won't say came as any surprise at all, but I'm certainly relieved at the results. And the question was, are you for or against we'll call it legitimizing a carp? Should carp be considered a game fish? I call it legitimizing it, because you're going to legitimize the species the minute you do that. And so we're going to show you that in a couple of minutes. So in keeping with that whole carp theme, we thought, well, let's just have at it. Let's make it carp expert night tonight here on Fishing Canada Live with Engine Bait. Why don't we go to the poll?
Excuse me?
You got it, baby.
Look at that. Well,
there it is.
Overwhelming, I'd say that one, isn't it?
Woo!
There,
Yes.
You like that, eh, kid? I got thinking about it afterwards, though. What difference would it make if they were now deemed a sport fish? We're already allowed to fish for them. Don't think there'd be limits. I guess there'd be limits on them, but the way the minister works, they're probably going to say, 15, 20 fish limit, it's like for those that would ever keep them to begin with, but most people are keeping them anyways. I'm wondering what the big difference would be, you know what I mean, to legitimize it.
Well, I can tell you what the big difference would be for me, personally.
Money?
Is that the sooner we make them a sport fish, the sooner we can talk about a 2-rod carp fishing regulation, which is what we need.
So that it has to be a sport fish in order to put that regulation in place?
Well, let's put it this way. It's much easier if it's a sport fish. Yeah. In order for it to have any clout at all when it comes to DFO, because this is a DFO matter. It's not just Ontario. It's the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And unless it's recognized as a sport fish, which means that it has an open and closed season, they are reluctant to start messing with, rules and regulations and ins and outs and all that. So most of you might be saying, so what? I don't even fish for carp.
Yep.
Right? In fact, we've got here two sets of comments. One for carp to be recognized as a sport fish, and we have an equal amount, if not more, for against carp as a sport fish. And I'll just read you a couple of ones that I want to maybe clarify a little bit. First of all, the worst one is from, and I'll mention names. I'll just mention the first name. Ray says, no, let's not legitimize this fish, because people who fish for carp should be called carpers, not fishermen. So Ray is clearly against anybody who fishes for carp, which behooves me how you could have any sort of disparaging comment about people who fish, regardless of what they fish for.
What does that mean? They should be called carpers, not fishermen.
They're not fishermen, because he's saying that as long as carp are not considered sport fish, then people who fish for them aren't fishermen, right?
Okay.
It's really funny, right?
LOL. I hate LOL. Don't write LOL to me, people. I hate that. LOL.
So Derek says, and I'm sure this is a typo. Derek says, carp are another non-invasive.
No, it says non-native.
Not native.
Non-native
invasive fish, and should be removed from any water body where it is feasible. Well, if we took that approach to all of our sport fish, guess what, Derek? We wouldn't have that many sport fish to go fishing for, because we don't have that many fish that could claim to be natives of this part of the world. They're all pretty much invasive.
They're all introduced, yeah.
We can go through the entire list for you. They've all at one point been introduced. And if people took the same attitude, much like the folks in New Brunswick with their muskie, if people took the same attitude with those fish and destroyed that fishery before it had a chance to get a foothold, chances are we wouldn't be talking tonight. We wouldn't even know each other, because we'd have no fish. So be careful with that, because
people. Just here's one question for you: smallmouth bass originated in South Africa. That one right there. Yeah. Too many knew that one.
Imagine if we destroyed them when they were originally put here.
Let's say the first 10 years they were here. Yeah, get rid of them. Yeah.
which in BC, as you know, Pete, that was. I don't know whether it's still.
I think it's still on the go for a lot of them there. A lot of the locals. Want to get rid of largemouth and smallmouth bass out of all the trout lakes. Get out. See you later.
We actually were organizing derbies and groups of anglers on bodies of water where they would just spend a weekend culling bass. And all they wanted to do was get as many bass out of that lake and kill them. And they had this big, presentation and this big to-do about killing massive amounts of bass out of their lakes. Wow, that blows my mind. But they considered it an invasive species. So there's a couple of, negative ones. There's a few more. It's one. Roger goes on to say, why should we? We got enough game fish as it is. Is there anything that would change? Just fish for them. If you're thinking of protecting them, what for? They offer a fishing experience for bow fishermen. Think of that change. Maybe we should offer up springtime bedding largemouth bass for the bow hunters. How's that? Right, that's what he said. Now he says, ouch. Did that hit a nerve? Well, yeah, of course it hit a nerve. Anyways.
Steelhead. Steelhead would be pickings too, wouldn't they, up the rivers?
Oh.
Let's bow hunt them.
Let's bow hunt steelhead, he says. Anyway, I don't understand those kind of, but on the good side, our good friend Calvin. I love Calvin, by the way. Don't know if anybody knows that openly. I just came out and told you. Calvin says, yes, carp fishing can produce some fabulous tournaments and great excitement for the average angler. And you know what's really cool about that comment, Calvin? I know you know this, but just to point out to a lot of people, in other parts of the world, in other jurisdictions, carp offer people an opportunity to go fishing that would otherwise never have that opportunity. People who do not have access to boats, people who have very poor access to boat launches, fish for carp in those parts of the world because that's the fish that's available from shore, which means anybody can go and enjoy it. It's not limited to just the few chosen ones. And I see the same thing here. That's the beauty of carp. And you can just walk on down to any point on any river, any creek, any lake, and pretty much guarantee yourself a shot at catching a carp. I think it's fantastic. And that's why I think not only should it be a sport fish, but it should be a very significant sport fish in this part of the world.
If you were to take I wrote this, I think Angie read this today. I wrote it down in something else that we were doing. If you were to take a kid that wants to go fishing, really wants to go fishing, he's never done a whole lot of it. You stuck him on a bank of a lake that's got all kinds of species in it. What do you think that kid would rather catch? Not catch and keep and kill and eat or whatever. He'd rather catch an 8 or 10 pound small, 8 or 10 pound carp, or a big 10-inch perch. What do you think that kid would have more fun catching? Honestly, we'll look at it that way too. I mean, kids, they're the future of our fishing. They get a ripper of a 10-pound carp on some light spinning gear, and they're hooked for life on all fishing right then and there.
That's it. I remember my oldest daughter, Jocelyn, her first, although she caught a lot of little perch and bluegill and all that, growing up, she didn't really awaken to fishing until she caught about an 8-pound carp.
That's right.
And then that was a whole different ballgame.
That's it. Exactly.
I like what Real Angle says. Carp, like other species, are now considered naturalized. If an invasive species is around for more than 50 years, it's considered naturalized. So they're here to stay. Good on you, Real Angle. I love it. Anyways, we got a bunch more. Maybe we'll post these up on the site or something at a later date, just to give folks an opportunity to read each other's comments, because sometimes it makes you wonder, for sure. And speaking of carp, and because we have royalty in the house tonight.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's not take any more time. Our next guest, or first guest, I guess we could call him, is a man by the name of Ross Honey. Now, we've had Ross on a radio program several times. In fact, we worked with Ross live, both in the UK and in North America. He is the owner of Angling Spirit in Hampshire, England, UK. He organizes and stages international angling events all around Europe and is closing in on North America. I'm sure he'll have a thing or two to say about that. He is the founder and owner of the World Carp Classic Tournament, which started in 1998, arguably the largest international, maybe global angling event on the planet in terms of attracting the most vast collection of countries and participants from those countries to the events. He's had up to 140 countries participate in the World Championship and throughout the series. An incredible event. That's how Pete and I both were originally introduced to Ross in England at a carp show of all things.
That's correct.
And instantly we absolutely fell in love with the man. He is a great ambassador to kids fishing and introducing young folks to fishing as a great alternative to what's available to them today. Let's not waste any more time. Let's talk to the man himself, Ross Honey.
Big one on section low. Right, quick, let's get the marshals going. Go, 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 go!
Welcome to the program, Ross. How are you, buddy?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to see you guys again. It's always a pleasure to be in your company, both on stream here and personally, as we've been over the years.
Thank you, sir. Now, really quick, before Angela, is the World Carp Classic the biggest fishing event in the world that you know of, Ross? That'd be a great question.
It's certainly the longest running carp fishing event of its kind in the world. I mean, I set it up in 1998. And we've had over 45 countries participate in the event to date. And in fact, the event we've just run, we had 103 countries that actually clicked on and were following it. So 103 countries from around the world.
Watching. Okay.
The reason I keep saying the biggest, because I've looked into it, and there's no other fishing event that draws so many countries to participate. I mean, there's bill fishing events.
That's what I was thinking, is bill fishing. You know what I mean? But not even
not
close.
that big. No, they're not that big. So, and in terms of the scope of the event, one only needs to see one time in their life to know if there's anything bigger. Man, oh man, it's
Show us where it is, because it would be pretty impressive if it was bigger. The parade alone, like that parade alone that they have at the World Cup, is like, it's unreal. You know, it's shivers.
What we did this year is actually really cool, because normally we'd have the parade with everybody holding their flags. We have like 300 or 400 people holding their national flags and everything. That's always quite a grand, very kind of exciting moment, because everybody's very proud of their countries that they're representing. But because of COVID this year, we had to think slightly outside the box and obviously make sure that social distancing was respected. So what we did this year, just to be different, to make sure the flag parade did take place, we did it in the cars. So all the teams were actually in their cars. We had anglers on top of the cars. They had inflatable boats. There were flags going everywhere. So you can imagine like 150 cars going down with all these flags. It was just amazing, honking the horns and tooting, and it was really something quite spectacular.
So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in that I want to talk to you about leading up to this year's event. I mean, obviously the rest of the world, for the most part, has gone into shutdown regarding events, especially events where you're drawing more than 50 people. Talk to us about the process. How did you navigate through this crazy period that we're having before you had the event?
Well, to be frank, I mean, as I said earlier on, this is probably one of the hardest events we've actually staged on so many different levels. Because in the first instance, we're running an event in the middle of a nature reserve in France. It's in a different country to the one we currently live in. At the time when we had when the event was launched, we had just under 30 countries that were due to participate, literally ranging from Canada right the way through to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Russia, Ukraine, you name it, literally the whole world was included in this. And obviously with COVID and the challenges we ran into there, we had to knock that back. So all the countries that were due to travel long haul, their places have been secured in the 2021 event. So we effectively had the European countries there, but we had 18 countries represented with over 300 anglers competing. But we didn't have a book that said you can do this and you can't do that. There were no real guidelines. So we had to set about actually establishing the COVID guidelines that we were to apply and to incorporate for the World Kart Classic this year. And that turned out to be a 60-page document with everything literally going from the registration process, when people arrived, where the bivvies were, where they had to get the campsite set up, then right the way through to the opening parade, the peg draw, how that was to be done, and we did that. So again, to ensure everybody was in their bubble and in their group, anglers for the peg draw, they were actually in their cars. So we did that live. So I had two people on stage. Drawing the peg, I'd then read it out. They would then go and place it on the chart to reaffirm that, and then we'd go through that process. And then ordinarily on the Sunday, which is when we do the peg draw, anglers would stay around and then still party on Sunday evening. But what we did this year is we then took anglers directly to their pegs. So you can imagine the logistics of moving. We've got out of the 106 pegs we've got that we use for the competition, probably 65% of those require anglers to be transported with all their equipment to islands and different places around the lake. It's a huge lake that we use. So the logistics in that all had to be taken into account to make sure the COVID rules were fully applied for that. Wow. So then, having, of course, got the anglers to the pegs, then the competition starts, then the fish start to get caught. Even in terms of how the whole weighing process of how the fish are weighed, who touches what, and then to make sure that anglers had to maintain their masks on at all times, if there were teams of 3, even if within the bubble that they had for the photograph. So it was really, really strictly applied. And then subsequently, the angler that had caught the fish, the other 2 anglers went away, and then they were able to take their mask off and have the trophy shot with the fish prior to it being released. They then had to put their mask back on and then go back to shore. So we really had to take this to the nth degree to make sure that this has been properly done.
Ross, was there a time where this event was in fact going to be cancelled?
Actually, yeah. I mean, on quite a few occasions, and the reason for that being is the easiest thing for me to have done is say, guys, hands up, we're not running it this year. We'll run it next year. We'll wait for COVID to pass. But I personally took the view that the desire was so overwhelming from the anglers that wanted to compete, to be part of this special occasion, that it made me very determined that if we had the ability to put it on and we could do it safely, then we should do. And to lead again and pioneer a way forward to say, look, okay, this is how we do this. This is how we can run an event with COVID still around, but to do it responsibly and safely.
Did anybody, you said from Europe, did anybody fly in to the area, or did they all drive? Was it very easy to have everybody in cars to get there?
The majority of people drove. There were a couple of people that flew and then hired cars, but the majority of people drove this year.
Having been involved in the things that you do, Ross, they're so social. I mean, the whole thing about carp fishing, about the World Carp Cup, the whole, everything just oozes with camaraderie and kinship and fellowship, and And I can't even imagine how you pull this thing off by having social distancing. I mean, that to me is just wow.
Even to the extent, one of the things we pride ourselves with is we have an opening banquet, and it is a proper banquet with wonderful food and everything there. And this year we did literally everything outside. Everything was done outside. The whole process of all this has been phenomenal.
We've got it written here. The first prize was, where do we see it, Ange? It was
162.5 pounds.
162.5 pounds for 3 fish. Is that correct?
Yeah, 3 fish, yeah.
Oh my God! Like what is this lake capable of producing? Was the biggest fish in that bag, or was there another team that had the biggest fish?
No. In fact, those guys didn't actually catch the biggest fish. The biggest fish that was caught from a totally different part of the lake as well, and that was 29.3 kilos. Which actually, by the way, thank you, I've got a calculator here. So let me do a quick bit of mathematics. So 29.3 times 2.2. 65 pounds.
Oh my God!
That was one fish, and so there are fish in this lake over 70 pounds, carp. So anybody that thinks that catching carp isn't a sport fish, I can tell you, hang on to one of them, and you just hang on. I tell you, you could connect a couple of water skis behind it, and you're off.
Was that are they mostly mirror carp there, Ross, or are they commons, or both? Or like that big a fish? Is that what species is that?
That one was a mirror. There are common carp in the lake, but there are also leather carp and linears as well. There's a 65-pound linear in that lake, which is a perfect scale pattern right the way down the middle. It's a perfect linear. So there's a huge fish in there.
You know, you talk about sport fish here in this part of the world, predominantly common, although we do have some mirror. But our fish are insane. These wild fish that we have here, they're insane. You get even a 10-pounder on the line here, it rivals just about any sport fishing that we have.
Sure.
In terms of speed, strength. These things jump. They spend more time out of the water than they do in the water during a fight. They're insane. Just a great fishery, and that's why, we've been fighting. Pete and I have been fighting for years now to get people to recognize the fact that, maybe the perception was that at one point that this was a we'll call it a garbage fish because that's kind of the label that it had.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago, and things have evolved and changed, and this fish needs to be elevated to the level that it deserves. Because
as a matter of fact, in our regulations, Ross, in the fishing regulations, just not only is it not a game fish, then there's no limit. If you were to catch them, you could catch 100, 200 if you wanted, kill them if you wanted. But they also have a bow fishing season for them. That's in
right.
The only fishing season we have for carp is bow and arrow.
Right. Okay.
Like, figure that one out. Like, that's just I mean, over there in Europe, you guys would go insane if you saw that. I'm sure.
Well, the thing is, I mean, when you look at the fish welfare and best practice angling that we apply as part of the rules, you can get banned from life if you mistreat the carp over here within the competition that we're running. We've got the flotation mats that they sit on. I mean, when you think that even over here, some of these carp are named, they've got a proper, they've got a name. And they get kissed and everything. They get put back, and it's different. It is very different.
I don't think I've ever asked you this in the number of times that we've worked together and I've interviewed you. Where did this all start for you? Was it just from the sheer love of the sport, or did it start as a business? Like, where did this whole carp empire come from?
That's a really good question. Well, I mean, the answer to that is not exactly a short one, but I'll try and keep it that way. In 1997, the end of 97, 98, I'd been working for a company which was a shipping company called Brittany Ferries, with ships going between England and France and over to Caen and the D-Day landing beaches and stuff over there. And I left Brittany Ferries to set up my own business. And the two things I love to do were play golf and go fishing. And I was involved in the marketing, the development side of Brittany Ferries. and had developed a golf program for them. So when I left, I thought, well, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to set up a fishing event and a golf event. That's what I like. Why not? So I looked around. I thought, well, look, there's I always like to have ideas and not just think about them, but to actually do them. But so I thought, right, golf tournaments. I want to set up the world's largest golf tournament of its kind. So so what actually is that? So I set up a club tournament called the International Pairs, and in a 3-year period, took it from its the original inception. Bearing in mind at the same time as setting up the World Kart Classic, and I took that from its the original idea to having 43 countries participate in it, with world finals in Scotland at Carnoustie, Glen Eagles, all the main championship courses, and over 3,000 3,000 events a year. But my target was to get a million golfers to physically play in that tournament, and that took me just over 3 years to achieve. So you can imagine going round to these wonderful 5-star golf courses, some of the best golf courses on the planet, and I'd set up a fishing event as well. So people are asking, what on earth are you setting up a fishing event? And but the first one I set up was one by which I wasn't quite sure which way to go in terms of events. So I thought, right, I'll organise a general fishing event. So I took 140 people to France. I knew the lakes over there anyway. There's pleasure fishing. There's match fishing, you know, where they're all there with the match rods and stuff. Then specimen angling, and
what is specimen angling?
Well, it's for big fish, like, you know, they're targeting big fish.
Okay.
So off I trotted over to France. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was blowing a gale like a hoolie. I was there on my own, and I had 140 people. So I stood by the fence of the gate. So, right, you are, okay, who are you? You are, oh, pleasure angler, right? You go over there. Okay, your hotel's there. Right, you are match angler. Match angler's over there. And anyway, all the match anglers are all lined up and stuff. Best angler, all right, you go over there. That's fine. You know, find somebody to fish, and we'll see you in a couple of days. So anyway, what was hilarious is the wind was blowing straight in the match fishermen's faces. They might as well have been fishing in the car park because they couldn't even keep their rod down. It was hilarious. The pleasure anglers moaned like flipping hell because their hotel was a bit too far from the lake, and it was windy, it was wet. Oh dear, it was a nightmare. But there were these guys called specimen anglers, and somebody said, "Oh, we heard somebody's caught a fish over there." Oh, great! So anyway, I went round to see them, and they had taken their own tents and stuff. They didn't require accommodation. They fed themselves. They were all happy, really pleasant people. Whereas the other guys were a little bit iffy and weren't overly happy by my organisation of what I put together. And I had a letter from one of the guys that had been on this fishing trip I'd organised. And he said, "Look, Ross, it was a really, really good event. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Myself and the other specimen anglers had a really good time. We caught a nice carp. You know, one of us caught a carp. You know, but when you organise the next event." So I scratched my head. I thought, hang on. They were really nice about it, and I had a phone call as well. I thought, well, do you know what? So I looked around. Carp. That definitely was a carp. Yeah, that's fine. What carp events are there around? Looked, and there weren't any. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to organise a world championship for carp fishing.
Wow!
And that in 1998, I got the map out at home, and I looked at the map and looked in France. Well, there's a big blue bit. That's a lake. Let me drive to that lake and see what it's like. So that's exactly what I did. Drove to the lake. Said, unfortunately, I speak French. So I said, "Hello, my name's Ross Honey. I'm wanting to organise a world championship carp fishing event here." And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. You know, like, what the hell is this guy on about? Carp fishing event? Yeah, I'm going to get people from all over the world to come here and do this and do that. And yeah, it's fine. So anyway, off I went back to the UK, having made contact with this lake and maintained contact with them, and set about setting up the World Kart Classic. And I managed to convince Rover to give me a car to give away as a prize, which in 1998 There was no other competition in the world of carp fishing, full stop, in Europe anyway, that had given a car away as a prize, let alone for carp fishing. So that's what happened, and we got, in the first year we had 146 anglers compete, and it was incredible to see the buzz and the emotion, and I knew it was something special that we'd found, and so from that I continued to develop that over the years to where we are today.
What a great story, man!
Great.
You know, it's funny because you can ask any organizer of events like that, and they all started much like you did. You know, it was one of those things. Hey, you know what? Why not do it? And next thing you know, it just blossoms. Of course, today it's the holy grail. Like, if you're into carp fishing and you're not fishing the World Carp Classic, then you're really not into carp fishing. And that's what it's become. It's unbelievable.
Well, you think about our little event, Fishing Canada Carp Cup. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to win that before you get a chance to go over and fish Ross's event. You know what I mean? Now, ours is the first of its kind here too, but there are some, there's some small tournaments around and all that stuff. But I mean, you got to get there. You got to earn your way to the big show for sure.
And as we know from the last event we held, that's not easy because it's very competitive. It goes right down to the wire. The last 5 minutes, ounces. Even though they're weighing hundreds of pounds of fish, it's down to the last ounce, right?
I would love to have one of our Canadian teams go over there, even if they didn't win. I'd like to have our guys weigh in 3 fish for 165 pounds, just to see what they get back with the stories they'd say, because that would be incredible to hear. You know what I mean? It would be so awesome.
Ross, tell us about the winning team. Where are they from, and what sort of experience did they have? Are they regulars on the tour?
Yeah, well, the team this year actually won there from Poland, but what was quite remarkable about them is they caught 2 fish in the first night within 5 minutes of each other, but the size of those fish were huge. So they took a lead on day one. They then caught the rules that we've got. We count the 3 biggest fish. So even if you catch 20 fish, it's only the combined weight of the 3 biggest ones that count. So they then caught the 3rd fish, which then took them right up to the top of the leaderboard. But given the rules of this competition that I introduced just over 7 years ago, where it is the 3 biggest fish that count, what then happened is the other teams were catching closely. And within 24 hours to go, there was another team that caught exactly the same weight, the same gram. It was exactly the same weight. So for the last 24 hours of the competition this year, they had exactly the same weight. So the team in the lead were to see the nerves they had, it was just sensational. Yeah. So right at the end of the event, so of course, traditionally I will go up and I will finish the event from the unofficial winner's peg, which was the poles. So that's where they were. So I went up to unofficially announce, and they got excited. They jumped in the water and all the good and great stuff. Oh, great. But literally the rule that we've got is if a fish is hooked up until before the end of the event, they have 20 minutes to land it. So from 8 o'clock in the morning, which is when we finish the event, till 20 past 8, if anybody's hooked a fish, they have those 20 minutes to land it. After I'd just done all this great excitement, congratulations, guys.
Here we go.
Ross, there are 4 fish that have been caught within 5 to 10 minutes to go. So they're in the process of landing them. So please make sure the guys know they're the unofficial winners. Anyway, get this is an absolute climax, the whole thing. The first report of the first fish that came in was 28.3 kilos, the second biggest fish in the entire competition, just over 60 pounds. Now, that one fish, depending on who had caught it, could have meant somebody completely different had won the event. Somebody completely different. Wow. And I'd never been so relieved that the person that caught that one, it was their first fish. So, but no, it's just brilliant. Really, really, really good.
Great way to finish, though. That is pretty awesome.
On the 19th of October, the TV highlights will be released. So you're going to see that, and everybody will be able to have a look at that. But you'll see the drama, and you'll see how big these fish are, and the excitement. You'll see the parade, and what then happened, just to cap this thing off, in 22 years of running the event, we had 40 to 50 mile an hour winds blow at the end of the event. And bearing in mind, we had to get nearly 100 people back to shore with these rubber boats, inflatable boats, piled high.
Wow.
My navigation skills were really pushed to the limit. And, so we had a delayed prize giving, I have to say. But
that probably added to the whole thing, right? I mean, I can just imagine 40 kilometer winds and miles. I think it would kind of add to the whole ending. I think.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it meant I was freezing cold. I was wet, and I ended up doing the prize giving in Wellington boots and the rain. Yeah.
It added to it because I wasn't there. That's why.
Freezing my bits off. I can tell you that was really cold.
Good.
Ross, not to change speeds here, but I wanted to ask you. I know that prior to the pandemic, prior to cancellations of a pile of different events in the fishing industry, you had been working on this thing called predator fishing.
Yeah.
In the U.S., especially, if I understand correctly, has this COVID-19 pushed all of that back? Like, what has it done to that?
Yeah.
And tell folks what it is.
Yeah, what it is again, linking in the knowledge I've got of golf. The biggest thing there is in golf is the Ryder Cup, where USA and North America take on Europe and the rest of the world. And in 2014. I set my mind up to create the angling equivalent of that, by which a legitimate USA team and North American team took on the Europe and the rest of the world team in a head-to-head event. So initially, I created the European structure, which is now firmly in place, and we did the launch event in America just after ICAST, and the event itself is called the Angling Super Cup. So that's the event. But of course, the location we used and we were due to use for this year was in Florida at Big Lake Toho in Kissimmee, and that is right in the middle of where it's horrendous at the moment for COVID. So unfortunately, not only did we not run the first full-blown Angling Super Cup event in its full state, we had to postpone it, and 2021 is looking exactly the same. Exactly. There's no point in us trying to, I like to take on a challenge, and I'm not one to turn away from trying to make things happen, but this is it's too much. And so I mean, I think the earliest we could do that would be 2022.
Interesting. Well, it's good to put it on pause, though. That's a good thing, obviously, right? Safety first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any concerns about the event that you just held? Are you testing? Are any competitors testing for COVID afterwards, post-event, or is that just sort of done now? It's behind us, and we move on.
No, not at all. I mean, one of the precautions that we took, not only did we have one of the world's leading COVID doctors on 24-hour standby, we had the hospital in Verdun, which is right near where the event took place. They were ready to receive people. We had temperature testing of everybody throughout the event, and we sent the 3 different media that have been there at the beginning of the event and going around and seeing different people filming as they had been. We sent them to the hospital to get tested, and that was done on the Friday afternoon, prior to the event finishing on Saturday morning, and they all came back tested negative. So there was that level of detail that we put into this, and making sure that if anybody up to another 2 or 3 more days became unwell, that we should be notified immediately, and all the precautions are in place thereafter.
Good for you.
Any advice to any would-be promoters of events? Any advice that you can give them moving forward as we wade through this dark time in our history?
Well, I think the thing is, to run events and run fishing events is definitely doable, without a shadow of a doubt. But you need to make sure all the different things are strictly applied, and do everything outdoors. We didn't do anything indoors. We had phenomenal sports halls that we normally decorate up and facilities. We didn't do any of that at all. So by making sure the events are run and all the registration, the whole processes are done outside, that's certainly a big step forward, and to make sure people do comply, and zero tolerance. If people don't comply, not only are they liable to mess it up for themselves and their families, but for everybody else there. So that's why zero tolerance is required.
Good stuff. Well done.
Well, to be congratulated, my friend. All the previous events were outstanding, but to actually pull one off during these times, man, hats off to you. Great job.
Absolutely.
And only one guy I know could have done it, and that's Ross Honey. So good work, my friend. I look forward to, at some point, anyway, it's got to happen. We got to be able to get together again. Certainly like to think that we're not done breaking bread.
Oh, absolutely not. And I tell you what, I really want to get something really good going on in Canada. So this has held us back a little bit, but it certainly hasn't stopped us. So far from it. We are very excited about actually coming across to Canada and doing something special over there with you guys.
Yes.
For those of you who might not know, we're working with Ross to see if we can't get some regulations changed in regards to the number of rods that are being used for carp fishing. And you know, every time we take about 3 or 4 steps forward, there's a couple back. It's been going on for about 5-6 years now. But anyways, we will endeavor to keep up the good fight, my friend. And we'll keep you notified. Looking forward to that day happening, and looking forward to seeing more of this great carp fishing taking place in Europe. Ross, tell folks where they can get more information if they want to watch some of the stuff, if they can get more information on your association.
Well, if they go to the worldcarpclassic.com website, so worldcarpclassic.com, and or indeed Angling Spirit, either of those will take you through to where you can find out more. So we're Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all those channels there. There's loads of information. And you know what? You can Google it. Google World Carp Classic.
There you go.
All right, my friend, go warm up. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, you take care. Keep safe, guys, and looking forward to seeing you as soon as possible.
All right, Ross. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Ross Honey, he is the owner, promoter, founder of the World Carp Classic Tournament, which, as I've said before, is the biggest deal on the planet.
In Canada, it sounds like nothing, right? To us, to the Canadians, probably say that's carp fishing. Oh, wait till it comes out, or even look at the old events. Wait till you see it on your computer screen or your iPad or something. It's unreal. It's absolutely insane.
It's been a pleasure to organise this event. We've got the prize giving to do, but I'd like to thank everybody, absolutely everybody involved with actually making this event possible. It's been a hard one, but anyway, thank goodness we've done it.
I can think those carp look like pigs with fins on them. You know what I mean?
I've been exposed to this, as you know, Pete, a number of years. But every time I see an event like that, I just get tingly all over. That is so exciting with fish that big.
Yeah, and
during an event,
and from those snippets that you see here, folks, that we've been putting in throughout this piece, you can see the quality of even the videography of that, the way they put it together. Everything is top notch in that whole organization. They spend the dollars and it shows for sure. So.
I'll tell you how big it is. Nick and I, my grandson Nick and I, had an incredible experience with Ross. He invited us to participate in the first ever World Cup, Carp Cup junior event. First time it was held just outside of Rome, Italy, a couple of years ago. I'll tell you how big it was. The Pope sent an emissary to open up the festivities. Right.
Nice. Really,
The size, the scope, the interest, the excitement. I just can't even. It's beyond words. It's something else. And I only pray that one day we can experience that same level of fishing excitement here in this country.
Yeah,
and we're getting close. We're getting close, and we will.
To bring that event over here would be monumentous, really, when you think of it. Because I mean, how many huge fishing events have we had here? Really, I mean, for a short time period, like the 3 or 4 days, whatever it is, there's not very many that have ever been here. That would just blow the doors off of everybody. You know what I mean? In the fishing world. So
I know you guys asked a bunch of questions while Ross was on, but we purposely kept them back because a lot of the questions had to do with how to catch carp. And in all fairness, Ross is probably not the right guy to ask those questions because he's never fished, with one exception, he's never fished carp in Canada. So we thought we would keep them for our Canadian expert, our local expert, who we'll bring on now. He calls himself, well, no, let me rephrase that. I knighted him.
Here we go.
I knighted him. Professor of carpology, a very good friend of ours. He is an angling guide extraordinaire. He's very interested in urban fishing opportunities, which is fantastic. And that's the other thing about carp, is it really lends itself well to urban fishing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he learned his skills, in fact, on the Otonabee River, not far from here in Peterborough, Ontario. Now lives in Marmora.
Marmora. What's the name of that? Marmora.
Why do we do that? We're so
the Ottawa Valley, Marmora, the Ottawa Valley, isn't it?
We're so immature when it comes right down to it. Eh?
I love being immature.
He's a member of Urban Carp Collective, a worldwide community of anglers who showcase the potential of urban waters, which is great because that's all about bringing the youth of our country to fishing. He is a teacher, a history major. He is also a semi-regular, probably a more regular in the future on the Fishing Canada platforms, including the Fishing Canada Show, fishingcanada.com. He has Outdoor Journal Radio. He has his own blog on My Outdoor Life on fishingcanada.com. Let's bring him on. I want to talk to Will Machette. Hey, Will.
How's it going, gentlemen?
Doing great, buddy. Yourself?
Oh, doing fantastic. But after an introduction like that, I can only dispoint, I think.
There's nowhere to go but down, right?
That's right. It's all downhill from here.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, Pete. And thank you very much for having me on the show today, gentlemen.
No worries.
What do you think of Ross?
Ross is a legend.
Uh-oh.
And everybody who works on that team was one of their videographers. And I follow Pete on his personal Instagram page. And I think if anybody here wants to check it out, Pete Castle is an absolute legend. He is amazing. His photography, he literally offers carp and photography courses in the UK. And yeah, he's an incredible videographer. So
I think I met him. I think I met him in Italy at that junior event. Great guy.
He would have been there, yeah.
It makes sense, as what I were just taking just before you come on, Will. I was saying, Nance, how those little snippets we put in there, you can see the production value alone in that, especially guys like us that are in the industry. But it's just people that don't even notice it; they just see these fantastic images. So I mean, they put everything together. So that guy, obviously, Peter, is very good at what he does. There's no doubt about it.
He is indeed.
Well, I've got one question for you before we get into questions from the audience. Okay. It's probably a dumb question, but that's okay.
Never done, buddy. Never done.
Yep. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I'm a teacher, so I'm allowed to say that.
Where's Marmora? That's a dumb question.
Where's Marmora? Yeah, 45 minutes east of Peterborough, Pete.
Thanks, buddy.
There you go.
Those big fish that those anglers were holding up.
Yes.
They looked neither like a common, nor what we have seen here as a marble.
Yeah, like a mirror carp. Now, you're probably thinking, how could that still be a Cyprinius carpio? You're probably wondering, how is that the same species? So, starting in about the 12th, 13th century in Europe, we began to see the domestication of the carp as a species. It simultaneously was being domesticated also in Asia, so in China and in Japan, where it was cultured, and eventually they bred it to create the koi. The koi is actually a cyprinid. It's a Cyprinius carpio, possibly crossbred with a Cyprinicus robuficus, but we don't actually have any real facts behind that, which is the goldfish, by the way. But what we see in Germany, particularly in some of these monasteries around the 13th century, is that they started to selectively breed carp to get these carp that had scale anomalies, which we in Canada see frequently as the mirror carp. Throughout North America, the mirror carp, and a lot of ours are fully scaled, or sometimes there's just a few patches of scales. But what they did was they continued to crossbreed it and crossbreed it and crossbreed it. Well, I shouldn't say crossbreed it. They continued to selectively breed it until they created a carp that had no scales at all, which became known as the leather. Now, what they did with that was they looked for carp that started, showing a little bit more of a tendency to grow more like a circle than a teardrop. And those became a certain strain. So if you actually Google this, there are Lithuanian strain carp. They are Galatian strain carp, and the list goes on and on. Simo, Simmo carp, and all these different they aren't even subspecies because they are a part of the same species, but these certain traits that were selected for are being used all throughout Europe. The carp that we have here in North America is a Danube River strain, which is the wild strain of common carp. So that is the fish that we fish for on a regular basis, and that's why our carp look nothing like these carp in the Europe, and that's primarily because our fish are wild fish. So this is the actual wild version that in theory is actually harder to find in Europe now, because we have selectively bred to the point where on all of the commercial lakes and all of these private lakes where people spend all of this money on these huge syndicates, what we have now is these massive specimens.
What is the process of them taking the two different carp species to create another one? Is it the same?
Well, it's not two different carp species necessarily. Or you mean to create the koi?
Well, yeah, anything like that. Like you're talking about these different variations, and as you said, sometimes they're doing it man-made sort of thing to create the koi. What do they do?
Esox lucius, Esox musculunch. What do you create?
Tiger
muskie, and and unfortunately that is an example of something that becomes a mule. Right, very similar to the liger, right? When you mix a lion and a tiger together, they aren't far removed genetically, but enough so that they can't create offspring.
Yeah.
So, but what happens with the koi? I think most cyprinids are like this. Is they're actually very capable of actually going between different because they're not so far removed. Their generational gap isn't that far removed in terms like a 2,000-3,000 years maybe difference in terms of evolution.
I remember either speaking to somebody in England at a carp show or reading it while I was over there, that the reason that this man-made mutation started of descaling the carp was because it was considered as a food.
It was a delicacy. So that was originally created. You can imagine, like, why would you want to spend that much time descaling a fish, especially during the dark ages where, that's time consuming and, calories burned versus calories earned, right? So they actually started just to breed them selectively to grow this big, that long and no scales. So they got more meat.
Continues my fascination with the consumption of carp.
Yes. The most consumed freshwater species in the world.
We don't.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. And yet we shy away from it here in terms of looking at it as food, because some of the complaints that we got from people who were against legitimizing carp, in other words, giving them a sport fishing status, where people were saying, why should we? They're not considered edible. They're not good eating. Why would I want to make them, a sport fish? I can't consume carp. So they're fixated with the fact that we cannot consume them. But that's not the case, is it?
Well, that's actually that's a centric kind of ideology. Go ask your Polish friends, your Austrian friends, your Romanian friends, people who are of Jewish faith, what they think about the common carp, and they'll tell you that's Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
That's Javelta fish. That's a sacred dish to my
Yeah.
people. So to say that carp is not a consumable fish is basically saying that all those other people that eat it, they're just them. We are us, right? So that is a very egotistical thing to say.
Well said, Will.
You know, and I think
I like peckerel. I like eating them.
you like pickerel? You mean walleye, Pete? I'm just curious. We're not going to play that game, are we? No, let's not get into that politic. That's ridiculous.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
It's a great point.
Oddly enough, I think when we get over that hurdle and more people sample carp for consumption, if that's the ticket, I'm willing to play that hand. If it takes some getting used to consuming it, in order to give it the status that it deserves as a true sport fish. Anybody, by the way, we also have a few comments about one guy says that he doesn't want to legalize them because they're slugs. He caught one inadvertently and it was like just having some mush on the end of the line. You have not seen the segment of Will on the Fish of Canada show where he had a fish on that
look at his image
around a dock. Until you see this, you don't know what.
We lost Will for a second there. But you're right. I've never, and I know you haven't either. I've never had a carp that was a slug when I went fishing for them. You know what I mean? They've never given no fight. Like some people call lake trout boots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Carp, man, I'll tell you what, they pull. They are pure muscle and they have a huge tail and they're fast. And they just pull like a little tractor. Right?
Yeah, I often wonder if people might be mistaking common carp, and this is a big one for red horse suckers, because I've hooked into a few red horse that was like I hooked into a tree stump that was dislodged. Like it didn't fight very hard, and that often happens just post spawn. So I wonder if maybe people are making that misidentification. Versus common carp. Only time I've ever hooked into a common carp that was fighting like a slug, the water was 35 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, it was cold, and that fish came in very sluggish because it doesn't want to exert the energy. Why should it?
Hey, Will, you being a carp aficionado, so the government says find a DFO and everybody breaks it down, and they say, yep, we're going to make carp fishing legal, but it's a species, not illegal, whatever. Make it a species. Let's legitimize it.
Okay.
We want people to consume it. So you guys, as the carp experts, carp anglers, I know none of you, you revere these fish so highly, you'd never, ever hurt them. What would you think about people catching them, keeping them, and eating them?
So very similar to anybody that would be they're on bass. Okay. Pete, whether you like it or not, somebody could very well eat a 5-pound bass, and that's within their legal right.
Of course.
Okay. But all we have to do is we have to explain to people the concept of bioaccumulation of toxins. You need to explain to people that an animal that has been in the water for 10 years has accumulated a great deal of whatever could be in these waters. And let's face it, we haven't been very nice to most of our aquatic ecosystems historically. So we need to kind of explain to people that the larger fish are trophy carp, as we call them. So anything over, say, 15 pounds. Okay, let's say the average in Ontario is about 14, 15 pounds. I think that's a fair number to say. And if we were to put any fish over that, is considered a fish that may not be safe for consumption, right? I think that's how we have to go about this. Very similar to bass. Like there's nothing wrong with eating a 1-pound bass. There's nothing wrong with eating a slot-sized walleye. But there is something unethical about eating a large walleye, and it's very similar to the First Nations people think it's very unethical to eat female walleye. And, First Nations people's practice is to spear the male walleye because one male could do the business on quite a few eggs, right? So they look at the male as being the fish that they'll spear, and that's the fish that they most commonly consume is male walleye. So I think if we look at this in terms of, okay, people want to catch carp, and they want to consume carp. And the DFO says, right, if you're going to make it a species, there needs to be limits put into place, and we have to encourage that people eat them. We need to do studies to see what weights are safe. I think a lot of that's going to come down to the water body. I think a lot of that's going to come down to zones, right? I know for a fact that the Trent Severn might be different than Lake Ontario.
And that's why they need to be regulated. In order to be regulated, they have to be considered a sport fish, because without that status, there will be no regulations. And
absolutely. Well, what does a rock bass get a sport fishing title? No, but is that not one of the hardest fighting fish, pound for pound, in probably the world?
And by the way, let me let you in on a little secret. One of the tastiest freshwater fish that we have.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Anyway, enough about eating. Why are we talking about eating our poor beloved?
Hey, you brought it up, not me.
I brought it up. Sorry, gentlemen.
Right. Yeah, you guys brought it up.
I know Angelo wants to try eating a carp. I know he does want to taste it just to test it, because he said that. And
say it, try it. Can't knock until you try it. So go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take some questions. Ken has been asking this question for a while about catching carp through the ice in Canadian winter. Is that doable at all?
Oh, yes, it is. Andrew Walker, you gentlemen should know that name.
Yeah.
Andrew Walker is famous. Cast and Conquer Guiding is his handle on Instagram and as well on YouTube. That man catches carp through the ice. His nickname is the Iceman. That's what we call him amongst the carp community. This guy, I've seen him pull 32-pound carp through the ice. He's out in Quebec as well, which does make a huge difference. They can run multiple lines compared to our 2. I think he has upwards of 8 in the water at a time. So he can cover a very large area, and carp tend to group up quite heavily in the wintertime, and they kind of stay close together to accumulate that biomass and keep the heat in their area. So they tend to find one location that is a good sort of wintering hole, and they'll all hang out over it. But they still eat. They do eat over the winter, just like every other fish.
Do they move around, Will? Do you know if is it been recorded that they move around, or they kind of stay in that one little zone for the heat, or any ideas?
I would imagine so. Like any other fish, they will move around with the pressure changes and with the temperature changes. So, I'm assuming during certain pressure changes, you might see them come onto the feed for maybe an hour in the whole day. Like every fish in the lake will feed for an hour, and that's it, and it's off. So 23 hours out of the day, they are in a sort of stasis. But I know when the temperature dips below 5 degrees Celsius, they eat a very small portion of their body mass per day because their metabolism slows so much. But when it hits a certain temperature, about 10 degrees, you start to see an almost exponential growth in their consumption rate. So it's it is very hard to do. I see Ken was the one who posted that, and he's out on the Bay of Quinte. So yes, Ken, it is doable. It is a lot of work. So once you find them, and I can give you the hint that where you find them in springtime, there's a wintering hole not too far away, and that's all I'm going to say.
Hey, Ange, could you imagine dropping a Panoptix transducer down that hole and looking for giant balls of carp, giant balls of giant fish? That would be the most incredible sight you'd ever see, and you'd be able to ID them with your fish finder. You believe it or not. Not only find out where they are, you'd be able to ID the fish. It'd be that distinct. That would be cool.
Another claim to fame for Andrew Walker, in case people don't know, he holds and will hold forever the largest total weight of carp caught during a Canadian carp competition. I say he will hold it forever because the rules and regs of these events have changed. This was the last year that the Carp Cup here in Canada had a total fish caught weight.
That was incredible. It was nuts.
Total for 3 days, nonstop, 24/7. I think it was a 72-hour or 62-hour event, nonstop. His partner and Andrew caught over a ton of carp. 18.
It was ridiculous.
Oh, it was nuts.
It was unbelievable.
He's not only good through the ice. He's not bad at softwater fishing carp.
Oh no, he's one of the Canadian ambassadors for sure. He's one of the best carp anglers I know, and I love when I have the opportunity to fish with him. Unfortunately, COVID this year, we had some plans actually to do some work together. We were both YouTubers, so we like to sort of collaborate with one another. But unfortunately, with everything that happened with COVID, we kind of
I have to add in one more thing to Andrew, because Andrew gave me shit for this. He is not just a carp guy. Okay, Andrew.
No, it's true. It's true.
Multi-species angler, excellent on muskies, excellent, blah, blah, blah. He's so good on carp that we keep raving about it. But Andrew, okay, buddy, we got you. You're a great multi-species angler and guide. So just to let everybody know about that.
He is for sure.
Merv Ellis wants to know about the Crow Lake.
Marmara.
Yeah, Camarmac, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's no carp in Crow Lake. So essentially, you will see that the Crow River connects all the way back to the Trent. And I had this question for years because I saw the Crow River and I was moving to Marmora and I thought, oh, certainly it's attached to the Trent. Anything that touches the Trent has carp. I thought, oh, I'm mega, right? No. There's waterfalls that come up the Crow right at the Trent, where it enters the Trent system. That's just north of Campbellford. So there are no carp in the Crow River or the Crow Lake, unfortunately, but they are prolific throughout the Trent Severn system, all throughout that area.
How far north have they roamed?
Well, I mean, there are carp in Superior.
Okay.
Really?
So any tributary that touches the Superior, you know, I guess it would all kind of depend on what would get warm enough for them to want to feel the need to inhabitate. I'm not entirely sure, but I know they're in Superior. They're in all of our Great Lakes. So they touch as far north as the northern tip of Superior. So I believe I know I've got friends that tell me they see carp at Manitoulin.
See, I'd love to find that out because we're being told by our northern friends that they don't exist north of Highway 17. So this is kind of interesting news.
Does Highway 17 cut across and stop them from flowing north?
Yeah.
Then that would no.
I'm just saying that's kind of the
river. Maybe the St. Mary's River at Sault Ste. Marie, which has rapids and all that, but it also has lock system. It also has
okay.
These can get through. There's a carp could get through there. So
a carp can get through it. Yeah. So it basically as far north as I think Superior is Superior and into like Thunder Bay and any tributary that touches those. So basically, if a dam was erected before 1870, chances are there's no carp on the top side of that dam. Because carp were introduced into North America to the Hudson River in New York in the mid to late 1800s, and then they went wild. They went everywhere because what was going to eat them? Nothing, right? So they just went. And of course, so that's what the biggest argument of a lot of people is that they're an invasive species. No, it was a boo-boo. They were introduced, but they have been here for so long that, to be honest, most of the bass, like Pete said earlier, have been introduced. The largemouth, I believe, came from California. I don't even think it was anywhere north of like the Great Lakes beforehand. No. Most of the pike we have today are actually European strain Esox lucius. There were Esox lucius theoretically here before. We do have some, but we also had the muskellunge. The muskellunge was here before. Most of the fish that we fish for today are introduced species. And we've just given carp a bad name because it's not something that we commonly eat. If that makes sense.
Michael Montague says that there are carp in Blind River.
Blind River, okay, so that's going pretty far up, and I'm sure they're smaller there. So like more than likely, Superior might hold some pretty big fish because it's such a massive body of water, but it's also a lot colder. So I would imagine that even though it is a bigger body of water and you'd think it might yield more 40 and 50 pound fish, potentially, I guarantee you it's actually less likely that they have a slower growth rate.
Yeah, I think Blind River might be on Lake Huron. I'm not sure if it's Huron or Superior, but regardless, it's close. It's real.
I'm just trying to think blind. It's been a while I heard that name.
Do you know what's weird about this whole thing now that I think of it? Why would there be a gap from southern Ontario to Manitoba? Because the Red River in Manitoba is full of carp, lots of carp. The Lockport Dam is famous in Europe as a carp fishery, which is, if you look at the maps, I mean, that's as far north, it's farther north than most of our freshwater, certainly anything connecting into the Great Lakes is. And they're there. So why wouldn't they be in northern Ontario? I don't get it. And we'll talk to Gord Pyzer here in a few minutes. The doc will be on. And we've asked him before, and he swears there's nothing up there. So we'll ask him again just to be sure. But anyway,
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the water's just that much colder, right? So they kind of huddle up in these deeper waters, don't move the streams.
Manitoba?
Yeah, I got a friend named Ryan Ginter. Ryan Ginter is someone else to follow. That man catches monsters out of Manitoba. The man catches. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know how to catch a fish under 30 pounds.
Have you been in Manitoba, anywhere in Manitoba in the month of January, February? It don't get much colder in this country.
I haven't had the pleasure. Oh, yeah.
Also, Saskatchewan has carp as well, right? Is it Last Mountain or Long Mountain? One of the two. One of those.
Last Mountain Lake, my good friend Anthony
Yeah.
Russell. I'm going to give him a shout out. He's caught some massive fish from Last Mountain, and it is probably a carp mecca of Canada that hasn't even been tapped yet.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
So they're around.
Yeah, they are.
What, in your opinion, is the best bait to use to catch carp? That's from Russell Jonathan.
Yeah, I think maybe Johansen,
Just
maybe, I don't know. Russell Eichel on the Fishing Canada website, and that was a little while ago, about my top 5 best carp baits. And I would say if you're looking to get into carp fishing and you want something that's cheap, something that is very accessible, go with corn. Go to get your can of Green Giant or go and buy a frozen bag of corn. Let that thaw out. Carp, for the most part, foraging fish, they see corn. It's a very high-vis colored bait. It is something that has a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of sugars, which provides the meat fish to continue foraging. It kind of gets them going. And I go into all those details on that article, so definitely check it out. Definitely check your regulations, though, because depending on where you are in Canada, is not allowed in some places, Manitoba being one of them, by the way.
Hey, Will, is there a difference between sweet corn and just regular corn? Or is there a reason to buy sweet corn versus just cow corn versus just regular corn, canned corn, frozen corn?
Okay, so it's all based on our palate for the most part. The carbohydrate rating to fat content to protein content is pretty much all the same. There's just a little bit more sugars in sweet corns in the peaches and cream than in cattle corn, but we notice it a great deal more because of our sensory, right? But carp, actually, if you got to imagine, carp don't have taste buds necessarily. They have an olfactory system where they can smell something and they can smell the sweetness. Right? They recognize that there's sweetness there. They can differentiate, but like they have to, we're tasting through the medium of our saliva, or we're smelling through the medium of air. They're constantly smelling water. Right? They're constantly tasting water and picking up scent.
Somebody once told me that carp or corn is to carp what a worm is to any other fish in the water column. You don't understand why, because they're not prevalent. They're not living there. But for some reason, they work, right? So
that's absolutely correct. But honestly, worms can work for carp as well. It's just you catch every other species in the process of trying to catch a carp.
Yeah, there's a comment I have to read out. This one guy, Adrian, says, "I've used musky lures to some success, or corn in a row bag." I'm not sure about the musky lure comment there. Corn on a row bag, I can understand. Not too sure about the muskies.
Well, corn on a row bag was always popular for salmon and trout too. If you didn't have the eggs, you threw corn in the bag, and that works too. And I mean, musky lures, I'm assuming it must be a snag job, possibly. I don't know. If I saw a carp blow up a musky lure, I don't know what I would say about that, but you know.
True enough. One of my biggest ever Lake Ontario carp, one of my biggest ever carp, I caught on a hard suspending jerkbait on a Carolina rig. I was just pulling it in for smallmouth bass, and that sucker came in and ate. And he tapped it. Boom! I said, "Oh my God, what have I got here?" And it ended up being like a 35 to 40 pound. It was giant carp in the Pickering discharge. Monster fish, and he ate a minnow bait, a fake minnow bait. So
and cool. Honestly, one of the things that we've noticed is that carp are a fish that they can be to some degree predatory. I have heard from many of my friends that in Niagara in particular, they've seen carp charge bait fish piles.
Sure.
And that it is possible that they could charge gobies. I've wondered, because gobies are pretty slow. And if you've got corn on the bottom, gobies will go after that corn. And I think a 30, 40 pound carp with a mouth that could swallow a softball probably just goes soup and a goby's gone. You know?
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see.
Awesome.
That'd be an interesting bait to try on carp, actually.
If only it was legal to use. You'd catch a lot of big smallmouth that way too, wouldn't you?
Why is it illegal to use? I'm talking artificial.
You can't use a goby. We use live bait, but I don't know about sculpin. Could you use a sculpin possibly?
No.
But I'm talking artificial goby, imitation goby bait. That we use for smallmouth.
It could work. I mean, the only thing is you have to keep it on the bottom and move it slowly, possibly through a pile of bait to make them see it as a, possibly a foraging goby, and they might charge on it, especially the right time of year, because I know they take crayfish fly patterns.
Or better yet, why not put some corn, a piece of corn, at the front of the goby imitation bait.
Oh my God, you got Viola working now, boys.
Wow.
Here we go.
Wow.
Oh, shit.
You got the best of both worlds.
Possibly. You got that almost live bait-like feel with the artificial. Sure, why not? I'd be willing to give anything a try, Ange. And if it turns a bass angler into a carp angler and they realize they can use the lures from their box, then all right.
I think it's fantastic.
I agree.
I just got notification here from Tim Sturgeon that when I mentioned that Lockport, the dam, the Red River, full of carp, apparently not so much so lately.
Oh, okay.
Something has happened. I know certainly when we were there last
I
year.
have a friend, Red River. Oh, okay. I think there's a little bit of a glitch here, a little bit of a delay in our system. My friend Anthony right now is actually fishing the Red River in Manitoba. Not sure which dam he's below right now, but he's below a dam, and he was apparently crushing it today. So he had quite a few, not big, but he did have a couple of quality fish up to like the mid to high double range, so up to 17, 18 pounds.
Lockport is the only dam that you might be referring to.
Okay.
So it's Lockport, and I'm surprised Tim's
okay. So yeah, he has a few there.
Anyways, last we saw they were loaded, and you just verified that as well.
That was actually our first ever carp episode, wasn't it? Answer that you did it up.
Stu Mackay. Stu Mackay. He's a legend on the Red River for carp and giant channel cats.
Yeah.
So just a great body of water. Absolutely outstanding. Not
to mention the greenback walleye that come up there.
Yeah, we'll throw that in every once in a while.
You know, just might want to throw that in,
what do we got? Mike, throw something up there.
And as Mike's throwing something, Ron says, "Are crankbaits good this time of year?" Just in case, maybe not for carp, but I'll guarantee you for bass, buddy. A 2.5 square bill in the weeds right now. I didn't say that, did I? Oh, yeah.
No, I didn't hear
you. A crayfish imitation crankbait has actually caught a few of my friends' carp while they were bass fishing.
Right on.
So, and that was in the right time of year where, actually this time of year, carp would start to become a little bit more aggressive and predatory. And it's usually in that late spring as they come into spawn, they're looking for that, last munch before they go into the spawn and into the fall. Like I've had friends catch them on spinner baits, and like they're in the mouth. It's not snagged in their head. It's in their mouth. They took that spinner bait, right? At a nice slow retrieve. So anything's possible. They can get aggressive. I know people that were catching them on red devils below dams, they just throw it in and trail it back and they were catching them in the mouth as well. So it's all based on the ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
He's a fish.
Yeah. George, what about George, Ange? Candy corn would catch me, George Adair says. I like that. I'm with you, George. I love that stuff. What about that pink? You guys ever eat that pink elephant popcorn in the box? Oh my God. Oh, I love that stuff.
Andrew Wolowski, our good friend from the Fishing Canada Carp Cup.
Yeah.
Arthur, I'm sorry. I've got Andrew on the mind. You got me excited talking about 1,000 pounds of carp he got. He says, "Hey boys, I think it's worth to mention the social aspect of carp fishing, which we have done, throughout the beginning of the program. We were talking to Ross Honey. However, I do also want to caution people right now that unless it's with your own bubble, that's one of the problems with carp fishing is that it lends itself so much to socializing with friends and family members that although we'd like to promote it all the time, we do have to also use our heads and be careful with the social aspect of it. But it's
absolutely. But 12-foot fishing rods.
Good point.
I can keep someone at the other end of my fishing reason, right? So, but I'm also a very solo carp angler, and I find it really funny. You said, if you're not fishing the WCC, the World Carp Classic, you can't call yourself a carper. Well, you actually may find it very surprising, Ange, that I may never participate in something like that because I'm not that style of fisherman. I'm not a tournament angler. I'm a personal goal setting kind of angler, and I do a lot of things where instead of doing the big events, I like doing things just in my own backyard and setting little personal goals. Like I still have a goal of catching a 40-pound common here, a 30-pound mirror. And I know it's very possible for me to do that. And I have a few waters that could do that. And I think I need to set my own personal goals and achieve those before I actually ever, strive to something like the tournaments. It's not to say I never will, but definitely right now, it's not even on my radar. I have a lot of personal goals to catch first.
It doesn't surprise me in the least that you say that. Some of the best bass anglers that I know don't fish tournaments.
Yeah.
So it's not a prerequisite to be a good anything if you don't fish competitively. There's lots of people that do it. And that goes for any activity, whether it's golf or fishing or skydiving. You don't have to participate competitively to which brings me to a question that totally escapes me now, by the way. Just so right now I'm just buying some time so it come back because it was brilliant. Will, it was probably my highlight for this show.
And when you're thinking about that, I'll go to a Chad question there. Paul Castellano, we know Paulie from Cast Adventures, catches carp on green marabou jigs in the mouth. As absolutely a small marabou jig is a fantastic bait as well. Paul does a lot of fly fishing for carp, and it is so effective that it's scary. So it's totally opposite of the bottom fishing that Will and the guys do, but it's really, really effective. Paul's a great guy. He knows, I mean, he's a multi-species guy, and he knows carp really well. So that green marabou jig, which looks almost like a fly anyways, to be effective, that's a great statement. And thanks for putting that up, Chad.
Well, I'll say it right here, Pete. That's a carp fly.
Exactly. See? There you go.
Carp fishing on the fly is one of the most entertaining. It is a
not to be outdone by Solano, by the way, right? Not to be outdone by Paul, right?
Never.
That's good. Did you put your question back, Ange?
No, it's gone. It's gone. It's the beauty of being my age, right? Is that you can't be embarrassed about stuff like that. It comes. There's so much brilliance in this head, as I tell the Countess all the time, that it's very hard to keep it contained. Sometimes some of the good stuff escapes, like a good beer. The head runs over.
Never. Do not say that to us Canadian boys. We do not spill beer. We do not waste beer. We consume every ounce of our beer. You tip over the top of the sink and nothing comes out. So there you go. Do not.
Like a true Napanee man right there.
Right. You learned that in Napanee Elementary School, by the way.
That's right. The place to be. That's all I have to say.
Napanee's the place to be. Shawnee Martin will tell you the same thing. My boy Sean Martin.
So here was my idea, and I've said this a million times to folks that are hardcore carp anglers about the size of fish that we're recording. I noticed a comment earlier on, a question actually. They wanted to know what was the biggest recorded Canadian carp caught. Right? Here's my opinion. I personally believe that we have maybe world record carp in our waters right now. The problem is we don't have enough, and I don't want to, piss anybody off, but we don't have enough intelligent carp fishing pressure to really expose the true value of our carp inventory. We don't have enough people fishing them, number one, and then we don't have enough really top-notch anglers, number two. If we took all of the top carp angling community from Europe and brought them here to Canada for a couple of years, I'll bet you we'd be breaking world records, my opinion.
Wild. So, and if you want to know my opinion, I don't think there are many carp in Ontario, let alone North America, that exceed the 60-pound mark. The biggest recorded common carp right now in North America is set by Louis Montez, and I hope not screw this up. I think it was 62 pounds, 2 ounces. That is a monster. Okay. And that was from California. And you have to imagine California, much warmer climate than we have here. It's got a much greater growing potential. It was caught on a very small lake versus a very large water. So he had been baiting that water for years. Carp in Ontario, we have a life expectancy of somewhere between 25 to 27 years. And the average growth rate for a fish for its first, probably I'd say 2/3 of its pounds per year. And as they age, they start to lose weight. This happens in Europe as well. As the fish gets older, it starts to slowly dwindle away. The world record right now is sitting at about 108 pounds. And that's on a lake, a tiny lake called Eurolakes Aqua in Hungary. And that fish has been basically fed boilies every day of its life by the bargeful. Right? So that fish is literally obese. And many anglers in the European seen, look at that and say, and actually think that, yeah, it's a world record fish, but that's not a fish that grew to that size in a natural environment.
Yeah.
Most people would give the world record carp, an 86-pound common out of a French lake, Lac de Deux, is considered to be one of the biggest carp that has grown in a more naturalized environment. If you want to know the truth, Ange, I think the biggest carp in Ontario could go 60. But I think that is the bottom, that is the top end, and there's probably, if you can imagine, a pyramid of fish with millions that are under 10, there might be one or two above that 50 mark right now in Lake Ontario.
60-pound wild common carp
would never be landed by the average angler. Would never be landed.
That would be a world record.
That would be one of the records for it would be an Ontario Canadian record for sure, and it would be one of the biggest fish caught out of a wild water. And I guarantee you it'll either come out of Lake Ontario or the St. Lawrence. But if it's caught out of St. Lawrence, it's going to be someone jumping in
and grabbing it
in a boat and going down it. Because current is unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's fantastic fishery. That whole St. Lawrence is just scary. Buddy, we could keep you on here all night, as you know.
I've kept you long enough. I've kept you long enough, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you guys. But yes, let's wrap this up.
Tell people again where we've got a top 5 from you. Top 5 baits to use for carp on fishingcanada.com.
Top 5 baits, top 5 locations, urban locations. You can see Urban Carp Collective. You can check out the merch and stuff for that online as well. Top 5 urban locations. There are tons of little articles I put out. Spring tips as well. That's coming up because obviously we're coming into fall now, and then the season will be done. And then once ice is out, carp sessions will begin for me once again, starting around mid-April. So definitely check me out on YouTube. Check me out on Instagram.
Perfect.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me.
My friend, you have yourself a good evening. I look forward to getting out and doing some shooting with you.
Ice fishing with Will. Let's ice fish for carp with Will.
There you go.
I want to go out with Andrew. I'm going to bring the live scope out there and go out and do that. I think that would be very cool.
Interesting comment from Calvin earlier on. Nice to see a carpologist go head to head with a fishologist. Hey?
And me, the bullshitter on the side.
Oh my God, boy, we're running late. Without further ado, it's time for a little fish talk. As if we haven't been talking specifics about fishing. Wow. We're going to do a little fish talk with the doc.
Keep them bunched. That's what I want to talk about today. Keeping the bait fish bunched. You know, whenever we're out for walleyes, crappies, yellow perch, muskies, northerns, every fish that swims, one of the keys is finding big balls of bait. And then we use those balls of bait that we spot on the sonar. We use it as almost floating structure. But here's the key, folks. You can't go rushing in. You can't break up those balls of bait. You use the balls of bait just like decoys when you're hunting in the fall. If you come rushing in and you put the boat over top the bait, or you throw a big bait over top and you make it scatter, the predators scatter and your bite goes south. Keep them bunched.
He makes it sound so easy. Eh? Keep them bunched. Keep them bunched. Hey, Doc, how you doing, buddy?
You guys, we couldn't have planned this better, but I had walleye. I just finished eating my walleye dinner. Lynn and I had fresh shore lunch for dinner tonight. You guys are talking about eating carp.
Oh my God, yeah. I hate you, Gordy. I hate you. I want walleye right now.
Evidently, after last week's fiasco with the walleye dinner, she didn't take any chances about you.
Oh, good.
And I wanted to say, too, you're absolutely right. I typed a little thing in there about the carp on the red.
Yes.
But Lake Winnipeg has, I mean, they're out in Lake Winnipeg as well. And Last Mountain Lake, a good friend of mine, Jeff Madity, Jeff's with the Saskatchewan MNR. He's actually hatchery manager at the Capel Hatchery. And Last Mountain Lake's got superb. We've actually done some in-fisherman television work there, and got them in that 30-pound plus or minus a few pounds. So, I mean, there's magnificent carp fishing across Manitoba and Saskatchewan.
Yeah. You were with Rob Shells on that one, Gord?
Pardon me?
You with Rob on that, and in Saskatchewan, Rob Schultz. Is that what you're
That's right. Jeff used to be his head guide,
right?
Or he went to the hatchery. That's right.
Those guys know fishing and hunting out there. I'll tell you. That's
are they all common, or they have some mirror as well?
You know, I have not seen anything but a common carp.
Yeah.
And I actually, the last one I caught was in the red. Stu Thompson and we were fly fishing right where you said, Ange, below the Lockport Dam there.
It's fantastic.
Okay, we gotta move. We have to finally move from carp, because I love Gordy's piece there about the bait, et cetera, and I think that is such a key that I believe not too many people really focus in on. They more focus in on the game fish aspect of everything and the whereabouts of everything, and it's kind of bait is sort of an extra. But in this last year, I have really concentrated on finding bait to find fish, and boy, has it helped immensely. And
Pete, you know, we talk about that so often. When you find the bait, you do find the fish.
Absolutely.
And that's when you find them bunched up. If you find scattered fish, actually the walleye I had for dinner they were kind of scattered out. They were no great concentrations. And to be honest, I never spotted any bait anywhere. So it was one here, one there. But when you find those big balls, and it really is in the summertime, truly, and that's when you find those big balls of freshly hatched yellow perch. I mean, everything eats yellow perch. Lake trout, when you find those emerald shiners, smelts. I mean, you go out in the Great Lakes for salmon, and the worst thing, or lake trout, but the worst thing you can do is go running in and bust them all apart.
Oh, without a doubt.
And you say it's the worst thing, but you also say you shouldn't go, but you make it sound like it's easy. Sometimes it's really difficult not to break that school up, right? You first of all, it's not like it's visible. It's not like you can see it on a screen and say, "Oh, well, there it is." There, you know, you're using your mind and your imagination to form the size of the ball from the little information that you're getting from your sonar. Maybe there's some surface activity. It's really hard for anglers to know how to move and stay away from it. It's not the easiest thing in the world.
No, that's absolutely true, Ange. Although, if you do look, and never stop looking, you'll see all those dimples on the water, and you'll see the rises, and often the best rises are right in the middle, and it's hard to work your way in from the edge. Real good buddy, one of my best fishing buddies, Mark Steffel. Mark's in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and we were up on Casba Lake, and we were lake trout fishing. And we were casting for Lakers on Casba down the famous dome. It was the year we found the dome on Casba. And when we got down there, it was seagulls. And so we were looking up, and there's seagulls going crazy, and they're diving down, and the terns were diving down. And I'll never forget, it was a really, really windy day. Like, I mean, really windy. 3 foot, 4 foot rollers going through, and we were firing out Williams spoons, and the lake trout had brought the Cisco's right up to the surface in the wind. And I swear this is the truth. I fired a cast out, and I'm bringing the Williams spoon right through about 4 feet, 3 feet under the surface, and it came out of a wave into the trough, and it came right through the air, and a lake trout, easily 20, but closer to 30 right behind it, coming after it. And oh my God, that's the only time I've ever seen that.
You just painted the most beautiful picture in my mind. That is spectacular, man.
Right there, right? Going back to what Ange said was very important. It's hard not to, and then Gordon, what you elaborated, it's hard not to, but I know I am getting repetitive in this, but I have to say, and I'm probably saying it way too much, but Garmin's new live scope technology keeps you away. If you see the bait 50 feet in front of you, you know not to go in there. It keeps you at bay. It tells you exactly what direction that school is. and you can cast and you see your bait falling into that, your lure falling into that bait. So that technology, I'm not saying everybody go out and buy it, but I'll tell you what, if you want to stay on a school of bait fish better than any other way, because all the fish finding technology, including other Garmin, like the traditional screen, the side screen, the clear view down screen, it's all historical. So as soon as you see it, it's gone. It's changed. It's gone out of your screen, and it's not the same anymore. If they stay the same place, but they don't. And what Gord said about the boats spooking, that's the other thing that you notice with this Garmin, is the closer you get to that ball of bait, they go right down to the bottom. It's unbelievable how they just, you're not making any noise. You're on your trolling motor at a half a mile and a quarter mile an hour, and they still spook away because they don't want that boat above them and that. So there's technologies out there, folks, that are getting better and better at finding bait fish, staying away from bait fish, and staying on bait fish. That's a tip for you right there that really, really works.
Yeah. And the other thing, Pete, that a general point, I don't know if Pete Garnier's watching in. You guys know Pete, he fishes the Bassmaster Northern Circuit. Yep. And he almost won a tournament, I think it was 2 years ago. And it was on Oneida Lake, one of the Finger Lakes in New York State.
Yeah.
And this was the point. The bigger the balls of bait, and Pete found it was acre size, and they were yellow perch that had just hatched. He worked that school for 3 days, almost won the Bassmaster Northern event. Most of the guys were coming in saying, oh man, struggled to get 4 or 5 bites. And Pete just wailed on them for 3 days. And that's kind of culturing or husbanding that ball of bait. Like, it's not rushing in, it's taking your time. The bigger the ball and the shallower they are, if you take it easy, they will stay there. And they're usually there for a good reason. And they will stay there for quite a long period of time, like a couple of days, particularly if the weather doesn't change.
So Doc, then this is a question that's begging to be asked, and I'll ask it instead of our viewers. So we all the three of us know the importance of fishing a ball of bait. There's no question about it. But I throw this at you. If it sounds like it could be the most important key to successful predator fishing is finding where their food lives and where they're going to be in concentrated areas where there's a ton of it. That being the case, then shouldn't we all be studying bait more than we study predators? Shouldn't we understand those yellow perch, and shouldn't we understand the shad? Shouldn't we understand all of this food that congregates at a certain time of year in certain places? Because it sounds to me like if we figure that one out, fishing truly is fishing in a barrel.
And I couldn't have said it any better than you. Honest truth. On my computer for the magazine work and the research files and whatever. So I'd have it by species, walleye, smallmouth, whatever. You should see what I've got for smelts, Cisco's, and they're not easy to understand. There's been a phenomenal amount of research done on them, but it's research, so it's you have to be able to read. Those guys write differently and they think differently than we do, and they're really analytical. But if you can understand gobies, like. I hate to say this. I got to be very careful because I don't want to be offensive. I happened to see a YouTube thing the other day about gobies, and the guy was taught in the wintertime fishing for whitefish and why you need to be up 8-10 feet, and then the goby will fall down to. Gobies don't have a swim bladder, so right. Gobies are always on the bottom. Right. Cisco's are pelagic. So they roam so once you understand those sorts of things, then you say, if these fish are eating gobies, I don't want to be 10 feet off the bottom. A goby's never 10 feet. He doesn't have a swim bladder. He runs along the bottom if he's 2 inches, 3 inches above. So, and that is the important thing if you're mimicking a goby. Aaron Martin, Aaron's a really good friend, and Aaron will fish 2-inch drop shot. So his sinker, and if anybody remembers the lacrosse tournament at La Crosse, Wisconsin on the Mississippi River, and that's when he went something like 2 hours throwing a drop shot for bass for 2 hours, did not make a cast and not catch a fish. And he will go to a 2-inch difference. And that's what a goby does. Now, if you're fishing for other species, yellow perch or whatever, you might want to be up 2 feet, 3 feet. If you're fishing for ciscos, particularly out in the Great Lakes or for lake trout, I mean, they're an open water fish in the Bay of Quinte. You know, they might be down 20 feet over 80 feet. But Ange, your point was 100% right on. If you understand smells, you'll find everything that's feeding on them, and that is everything.
Yeah. To elaborate on that goby piece too, so you understand a goby, Ange and I have done some scuba diving in the St. Lawrence River, and those things are locked on the bottom for the most part. You're right, Gord. When they move, they go pop, 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 and they're back down again. Pop, pop, pop. They can't stay up, like Gord says. They have a swim bladder, so they do leave the bottom, but like Gord said, they can't go very high, and that's the way they kind of scoot along. But they're boom, they go back.
And how do you fish a tube for them, Pete?
Yeah, exactly.
You pop that little tube up, snap it up, it comes up, falls right back down.
That's exactly what they do. It's exactly what they do. So we've seen that.
The experience you just described. I know we reached out to you a couple of years ago. Pete and I had this phenomenal experience with bait all schooled up in northern Ontario on a lake, and we had never seen anything quite like this before. We have fished schools of bait right across this country, but we never experienced what happened that particular shoot. What lake was on? I was on Cabby Lake, wasn't it, Pete?
Yes, it was on Cabby Lake. Yep.
And I swear, every predator in that lake had moved to this one isolated little spot, because we spent a week up there searching for fish, couldn't find anything. We were ready to go home when we discovered why. Because every single predator within miles of where we were was all feeding at the trough.
It seemed like every bait fish in the lake was in the area. That's what brought them. Like it was stupid how many minnows were in.
And I say this because to this day we've never really found out why. The lodge owner, who's been fishing there for 25 years, had never seen this before. Wow. Never experienced this phenomenon, and it didn't make any sense. It didn't fit in with anything that we could kind of pattern, but we enjoyed it for another 3 days.
Oh yeah.
Same.
Yeah. But Ange, you make another phenomenally good point. And the mistake we all make, and how many times have you seen an outdoor writer or a television fishing guy, and they'll say, wow, this lake's a fish factory. None of our lakes are fish factories. Our lakes, especially in northern Ontario, especially in Canada, and the further north in Canada that you go, our lakes are deserts. 90% of the lake has nothing in it. So we're looking for the 10% max that has 90% of the fish, and that 10% is where the bait is.
And that's why we say it's a fish factory, because we spent all of our, what we do, it's interesting because you have to really understand what I'm about to say. We spend most of our time in those high percentage areas where we will make contact with fish. Hence, we say it's a fish factory. But you're absolutely right. People that are not using that same philosophy on finding fish, they're saying, okay, what are you guys talking about? You're saying that every time you drop your line, there's a fish at the other end. Well, I've been on this body of water for 10 years, and I'm lucky to get enough for a shore lunch once a month.
But they go out usually looking for the fish, Ange. You go out looking for the bait, and lo and behold, you find the fish behind them.
Exactly. So how can people better educate themselves on this revelation, we'll call it, of looking for the food as opposed to the hunter? Let's look for the hunted, because we'll find the hunter.
Yeah. You guys both raised two phenomenally good points. And your point was, number one, understand them. So if you understand perch in most of our lakes, you will find walleye. So Soon as the spawn happens, it is timed perfectly. So walleye spawn first, and then they finish, and now they're hungry. And what is the walleye yellow perch interaction is the classic. When you go to be a fish manager, when you go to be a fish manager and you're studying walleyes, you actually study perch because the interaction is classic. So after the spawn of walleyes, what they do, typically walleye spawn on windswept shoals, the mouth of rivers, neck down channeled areas. But as soon as the spawn is completed, they pull around to the first black bottomed bay, immediately adjacent to where they spawned. What's in that black bottom bay where there's tons of weeds, yellow perch, and they're all spawning? Do you think that's an accident?
Wow.
No, sir.
Wow.
Hey, how does a person find mayflies? I mean, when the mayfly hatches on, the walleye are going nuts. How do you find good mayfly hatches?
Probably the best way, Pete, is watch the surface. Number one, they tend to hatch in the afternoon. They're on firm bottom. So if you find that kind of 30 to 50 foot, and the reason I say that because my favorite depth is 40, but if you find firm bottom, they will be in silt. The other thing to understand, there's about 155, 165 different species of mayfly. So they're all in slightly different types of habitat. But the fish generally tell you, and they hatch in the afternoon. And so how many times have we been out in but in late May, particularly June, and July, and right at sunset on those beautiful early summer evenings, flat, calm, sunny, and it looks like it's raining and it's dimpling on the surface. And those are ciscos, whitefish, yellow perch, walleye, smallmouth, and all they're doing is gobbling up the mayflies as they hatch. And the other, you'll see them on the fronts of buildings, and it tells you. And the other interesting thing, and I love your mayfly question, because if you ask most walleye anglers, they'll say it's a tough bite. And you go, tough bite? Well, they're eating all the mayflies. So go where the mayflies are and give them a mayfly imitation. And the best mayfly imitation ever is a slow death rig. So you pull a slow death, which is nothing more than the curled hook, put a night crawler on it, pinch it off so there's about an inch coming behind, and it twirls like this. And you just put it. If you're fishing it on the mud where you see mayflies, I guarantee you won't go 100 yards without catching a walleye.
All right, I have to admit, I have to come clean. Okay, I have to come clean. I have caught myself doing exactly what you just said. And that is, you go to an area and it's littered with mayfly carcasses.
Oh no, I didn't say that.
Okay.
That's where the wind carries them.
They're moved, right? They're moved. So I was just going to say the same. So what happens is we get into this mindset, oh my God, every place on this lake I go to, there's going to be carcasses, which means, oh, I'm too late. I'm too late.
And those aren't carcasses usually. What those are the shells that they crawl out of. And so they just get washed away, and the way they get carried in the wind. But what you want to find is where they came up and hatched. And the other interesting thing, we were out fishing for crappies the other day, my buddy John and I, and the seagulls were circling. A lot of people don't realize this. So the seagulls and the swallows, and you look really, really carefully, and you go, they're not feeding on anything. They're just coming down low to the surface. The chironomid hatch, bloodworms. And again, I won't go. Bloodworms, they go through 4 or 5 instars, so they grow and then it's full metamorphosis, and then they transfer into from the larva to the pupa, and then they go up and they hatch. Well, right now is one of the best midge hatches. People don't believe they will hatch this time of year. It's phenomenal trout fishing for rainbow speckles, splake, whatever. But everything's eating them, and the crappies were. But we watched the seagulls circling. So I said to John, oh my God, look, and they're swooping down. And you'd say, oh, they're not feeding on anything. They're just swooping. But they were in a huge circle. And we went to the edge of the circle and we just worked our way in and had fun for a couple hours.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow. I love that. I love that stuff. Absolutely outstanding. I'll quickly share you one of my greatest moments in mayfly experience early on in my career. In fact, it was on a tournament, and I've told you this story before, Pete, on Sturgeon Lake here in Southern Ontario, and it was a walleye tournament, and Reno and I stumbled onto the perfect storm, the perfect moment, right? It was about 30 feet deep. It was a bowl, and it was silted. And I can't remember why or how, but somehow, believe me, it was purely by accident. Somehow we stumbled over top of it and started hitting fish. And so, now you start putting it together. We were using sonar. We could tell that this area was soft and everything else was hard, and it was a bowl. Everything else was like 26 feet, but this was like 30, 32, and it was soft, and make a long story short, we produced walleye. Like, I still to this day have never, in terms of quantity, even including in trips up to the wonderful places in Northern Ontario, in terms of total quantity, still have to this day never reenacted that moment. And all we're using is little black marabou jigs, tiny little marabou, just enough to get down to the bottom. And as soon as they would just start getting close to the bottom, they'd get smacked. And we figured out after the fact, not during the event, that was the mayfly hatch, and they were just starting to emerge from that silt. And so the walleye were down there just feeding like crazy. Just as they were coming up out of the silt, boom, they were eating. Once we put our jigs in that zone, it was magic. Absolutely.
And very good friend of mine, Bev Ritchie. Bev's with OMNR. Bev did her master's research on mayflies.
Wow.
There are over 1,000 mayflies on the bottom per square meter of bottom. So that's like 1,000 pistachio nuts on the entire lake bottom. So there are so many mayflies that our best, and Hexagenia lambata, that's the big mayfly. That's the big, beautiful one. It takes 2 years from an egg through the larval pupa and then to the adult bug. So it's even and odd years. So the big hatch in Ontario, I forget now whether the big hatch is on the even years or the odd years. It is so significant. Our best walleye hatches, our best walleye year classes occur on the years with the big, because they're not eating themselves, they're eating mayflies. Right. And so our best year classes occur on the years with the best mayfly hatches. Now, for all our listeners, I'll share this only with these good folks that have stayed this long. If you fish for lake trout, in the month of June, now they're called mayflies. I've always said they should be called July flies, because if you go out on the Canada Day weekend, I don't care where you are in Canada, mayflies will be hatching. It'll be very, very close to the peak. You find 40, 45, 30 feet of water with a clay bottom. You go out, put your boat there, fire a blade bait. I do not care what blade bait it is. It can be a Head and Sonic. It can be a Freedom blade. It can be a vibrato. I do not care. Fire it as far as you can throw it. Let it fall to the bottom. And your line will go limp, and now start just reeling it in. And the whole time you're reeling it in, it's doing this. It's doing this going up to the surface. Right. Our best day, we had 18 in the boat in 4 hours down in Whitefish Bay, averaging probably 18 to 22 pounds. We caught so many lake trout. At 1 o'clock, we said, this is getting boring. Let's go for smallmouth.
Oh, my God.
It is the most incredible, but anytime you see mayflies fishing, throw a blade bait over hard clay bottom, let it fall to the bottom, just reel. Don't snap it, don't pop it, don't hop it, don't jump it, just reel it in and hold on to your rod.
Hey, Gord, this might be a stupid question because obviously you're finding mayflies visually with your eyes. Is there a way of using your electronics to find mayflies?
Yes, absolutely, Pete. Absolutely. And this is the other really, really interesting thing. For every one that makes it to the surface, there's probably 99 that are eaten before it gets there. So we look on the surface and we'll go, oh my God, there's 1 million up here. Well, another 9 million got eaten on the way up. If you put your sonar on, especially side imaging or down imaging, or looking ahead, you will see that they look like streak marks. It looks like interference going up on, and if you really hit your contrast and your gain and balance it down, you can actually see them rising up off the bottom.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
Very interesting. There, I just learned something right there.
And you know why you learned something, Ange? Because I asked about mayflies. Okay, just to let you know. Okay?
Everything I know, I attribute to you already. I mean, how much more credit can I give you?
Well, that little bit helped right there. Let me tell you. Gordon, that was awesome.
I think it's just fascinating. I think, you know, as we get better and better at this game, as we learn more and more about these fish, it just, and that's what fishing is, right? Catching a fish is still a big moment. It's exciting, and we all love it and all that. But really, to me, and I'm sure to you too as well, it's about being able to put together all of these pieces.
Oh,
and hey, by the way, most of the time that puzzle doesn't fit. Okay, but when it does, when it all works, man, is there anything more special in your life at that moment than that?
And you're so correct. This will be crazy. I was rigging my ice fishing baits yesterday. I'm on, I swear to God, this is the truth. I am on a whitefish pattern ice fishing that, I'm not going to talk about it, not going to share it, but it's something I've been working on for 4, 5, 6 years now, and it's all coming together. It is so off the charts, it will blow your mind. But here's the point. That's what makes it fun. Oh. And you know what? If I go out this year and finally piece it all together, I'll probably leave whitefish alone and go fish and go to the next puzzle.
Exactly.
That's what the fun is.
Which is, I got to ask you this question. Then, do all of these great ideas and patterns and pieces of the puzzle we just have, are they that particular that they only pertain to a particular species, or can we take this information as a collective and kind of say, in general, this is going to work for walleye, for bass, for whitefish, for trout, etc.?
I will say this, and I've written about it and talked about it several times. The best techniques I've ever personally learned, often. So one of I actually was lucky enough to write the first swim bait for muskie piece for In Fisherman magazine, and this was back in the 70s, early 80s. How did I find out about that? A friend in California, and I've told you this story before, weighed in the 5 biggest straight largemouth bass in the history of bass tournament. I think it was 62 or 67 pounds for 5 fish. I said, Dana, so he's throwing 12 and 14-inch swim baits, 12, and I said, oh my God, and the way he did it was brilliant. So I said, you got to come up here, and we went muskie fishing. It is, and to this day, 30 years later, one of the best muskie fishing. I would never have known that if I hadn't transferred knowledge from the bass fishing world to muskies. And the folks who say, I'm not interested in bass, or I'm not interested in walleye, or I'm not interested in trout, they truly, truly are doing themselves a disservice, because what you learn about mayflies for lake trout, you can transfer to walleye, transfer to bass, and vice versa. and fishing for multiple species makes you so much of a better angler.
Without question.
You guys, I'll tell you, and I've said this to so many people, the reason you guys are so good multi-species wise is you both are great steelheaders, and you grew up fishing those streams and rivers leading into Lake Ontario and the Great Lake, and I have never met a steelheader who isn't a great bass angler.
True. It's true. Absolutely true. Well, fantastic. That's fantastic stuff, man. I'm excited about this particular segment. I think it's going to get some legs. I don't want to go off topic, but I have to. I promised myself. I made notes here earlier on in the program before you even came on tonight. We were talking about carp and should they be regulated as a sport fish? Should they be categorized as sport fish? We had a poll. In fact, overwhelmingly, our audience said, "Yeah, why not?" 66% said yes, they should be categorized as a sport fish. 34% said, "Nah, I don't think so." But during that whole process, we were getting people asking questions or making comments, and it kept coming up that they're an invasive species. Well, after 100 years, I don't think you can be categorized as invasive anymore. But one of the viewers said, "Yeah, well, ask Gord when he comes on because he knows this to be a fact. Bass, which are invasive species, they put a hurting on our native brook trout in Northern Ontario." So I promised myself to ask you that on his behalf. I don't remember who it was, but somebody that's on there right now wanted to know that question. Did bass have an impact on our speckled trout fishery in Northern Ontario?
They definitely can.
Ken Johnson is the guy who asked right there.
Yep, Ken, they definitely can have an impact. Any fish that isn't native to that area or range will have an impact. It's as simple as that. There's a farmer's field, and it has a carrying capacity, and our lakes have carrying capacities. So you can take a lake, and it can produce 100 pounds of fish flesh. If what is in the lake are brook trout, it produces 100 pounds per acre, or not an acre, but the lake will produce 100 pounds of brook trout. If you now add smallmouth bass to it, it'll produce 100 pounds of bass and brook trout. But if the habitat is maybe favoring bass a little more, it's going to produce more bass, and they're going to impact on trout. And absolutely the case. Right now, there's a bounty on bass and walleye as well in the state of Washington. So if you're out fishing, in fact, this will blow your mind, you can't release a walleye. You have to kill it.
Wow.
They don't want walleye. They want rainbow trout. They want salmon. We don't want those damn walleyes.
We have an article on our site, Ange, about that. It's called "Chopping Off Walleye Heads." If you look that up,
right. Remember that.
Up there, it's exactly that. So
now here's the downside of bounties, and not that we won't spend. I think that's a terrible, terrible approach, because what's to stop some guy from talking to his buddy on the Great Lakes and you're wasting valuable fish and wildlife license dollars paying bounties to folks that didn't legitimately catch the walleye in Washington.
Right.
I think it's very short-sighted. But rainbow trout aren't native to the Great Lakes. But pheasants aren't native to Ontario. But how long does something have to be here? And if it's producing a great resource, why wouldn't you manage it? And you might manage it with heavy limits. You might, very few folks fish for whitefish. So in most of Ontario, outside of, say, Lake of the Woods and Lake Simcoe, where the limit's 2, in most of Ontario, the limit's 12. So you could have a limit of 20 carp or 30, but at least classify them, at least manage them. And then when you get down to the Great Lakes, where they're a booming fishery, you say, let's create the best carp fishing in the world here.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you do that?
I don't understand. And I've had meetings with ministers and premiers and you name it about that very topic. We have this resource. It's there. It's not going anywhere. It's been there for 100 years.
We have biologists in Northwest Ontario. They used to work for me, who hated bass because they're not, but they're one. It was only because of the way the glacial ice retreated. They're native 50 miles away in Minnesota, and they've been here for 150 years. They create a magnificent fish. Why? And so this is what blows my mind. They laugh at bass anglers. The biologists literally laugh, and they say, we can engage these stupid bass guys, and we can encourage them to fish them on the beds. We can encourage them to move them in the fall, and they'll help us eradicate bass out of the lakes that they want them in. And the bass guys are too dumb to realize that what we're doing with them.
You know what? I heard that exact same thing. Now, obviously there's two different bass anglers out there. There's a type like us that throw everything back, but there are the average weekend anglers that realize bass is a good eating fish. And I have heard that biologists, and I always question it, Gord, but it's a great point, is that the biologists create the all year bass season for just that reason. They're making it sound like they're heroes to the bass community, but in any case, they're hoping that the people are keeping their 5 and 6 bass every time out, and they're weeding out the bass. So I mean, if that's happening,
and here's the other thing that really bothers me, guys, and it does pertain to your carp on the St. Lawrence, is up here, the really devout bass guys are the reason the bass fisheries are flourishing, because they're catch and release. They're not fishing them on beds. And so you go, and so you say to the managers, if you will, it's not costing you a penny to manage these fish. The anglers are doing them for you. And the other, it just doesn't work this way. They say, well, if we increase the limit to 6 for bass and put walleye at 2, they'll kill bass instead. No, they won't.
Exactly. What kind of thinking is that?
In fact, what they're going to do is kill 2 walleye, and if the meat eater, he's going to, and you go, that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to bring the angler in to work with us and engage them and be managers. Every angler is a resource manager.
Of course, absolutely.
I have to ask you this then, because to me, when I think of your name and see your persona, I do connect you to the M&R. Okay,
right. I'm 31 years proud of it.
Exactly. You spent so much time there. So I have to ask you this question, right? If it's so clear to you, and I'm sure it was clear back then too, it's not something you just developed. That philosophy didn't happen last week. If it's so clear, and I've talked to other people at high levels within the ministry, if it's so clear to you that, and I hate picking on people, but this is all about people. If we have the wrong type of person in place to make intelligent fisheries management decisions that are not based on any real science, why the hell don't we just change it? Why don't we just say this? It's enough. We've changed so many things in the last couple of decades on this planet. We can't change the thinking that our biologists have in terms of our resources, our wildlife, our fishery.
And watch the bass forums and discussions in Southern Ontario in the spring. Go to Instagram or Facebook, and they'll say, "Look at those guys up north. They can enjoy fishing for bass on the bed. We want that down here on the." There's your answer. So you know what the guys will give them what they ask for.
Yeah.
I have said this. I've said this many times, and I wrote a piece about it, intentionally controversial. If you shine a light on the globe, there's a little tiny portion, little tiny area of where the best smallmouth bass fishing on earth is. Where do you think it is? Southeastern Southern Ontario. From the Ontario portion of Lake St. Clair, the Ontario portion of Lake Erie, Lake Simcoe, all the area down there into the southeast on the St. Lawrence and Lake Ontario. Why is it the only place on earth that affords smallmouth bass protection? And do you think that's a coincidence? And so here we are in Northwest Ontario, and there's places in Manitoba where the tournament is won. There are lakes where the tournament's won with 8, 9, 10 pounds for five smallmouth, and you guys weigh in 1 fish that weighs that. What do you want?
Mind blowing. Yeah, mind blowing.
So what you're saying is that we need to take it upon ourselves as fish managers, as you pointed out. Every angler is his own fish manager, and we need to change our thinking, our philosophy. We need to be a little less selfish and more forward thinking in terms of preservation and managing.
Well, and the other reality, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm probably the one that's wrong here, but you will find those folks that say, well, they weren't native here, but my attitude is yours as well, Ange. How many rainbow trout have been in the Great Lakes for over 100 years? Bass were brought up in 1901, 1902 from Lake Erie and planted all along the railroad in northern Ontario. Maybe they weren't native, but my God, they've been here 120 years. When are you going to recognize that? And these are the same folks that are dumping rainbow trout, brook trout, splake into lakes where they didn't exist before.
Right.
Put and take stuff. So wait a sec. How come it's right for you to do that, but wrong for me to say I want better bass fishing?
Because I'm selfish. I want it. It's all about me, damn it. Don't you understand? I don't care about the rest of you.
Speaking of which, show is not all about Gord, although we'd like it to be. You know what I'm saying? We have one more guest that might be coming on, so we're going to have to slow this down a little bit, believe it or not. It's 20 after 8, and we still have another guest.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. I just do it.
No, I'm going to leave, and you bring your next guest on.
Yeah, I already, as usual, an absolute pleasure. We get more questions about Gord, more emails about Gord, more everything about Gordy, and it's just a tribute to the type of person that you are and the outdoors person. The persona that you've created is nothing short of phenomenal. I encourage anybody listening that wants to really sink their teeth into fishing and the outdoors in general to follow this man. Check him out. He's available just about anywhere. Just go on Google and punch in Gord Pyzer, and stuff will start showing up. You could be reading stuff about this guy for the next 10 years and not run into the same piece. So,
yeah, so true. So,
of course, fishingcanada.com would be a good place.
That would be a good place. And Fish Talk with the Doc videos.
And Fish Talk with the Doc. Buddy, thank you very much, my friend. All the best to you and yours. Stay safe. Get back to figuring out that walleye pattern or that whitefish pattern. I want to dig into that one someday with you.
Someday, but not tomorrow.
Take care, my friend.
Be good, man.
All right.
Well, I mean, we're as bad as anybody. Not saying that the audience is bad. We're as bad as the audience. We just get sucked into Gordy's little tornado there, and just like, whoa, thank you. It's so. We didn't even have, like, we were talking about bait. We had no idea it was going to go to mayfly hatch, to the stocking, like that. That's just incredible. So,
I just woke up from a dream.
Yeah, it's freaking awesome. Love it.
All right, let's continue with the dream. Our next gentleman who's been patiently waiting, and he's, with all rights, he should be yelling at us right now. Hopefully he won't.
He's got knives in his hand tonight too, so we better be watching it about it. You know what I'm saying?
Right, he's going to be talking to us about knives.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be scary. He's going to hopefully sharpen some right here on screen. Antonio, come on, buddy.
Hey, good day, guys. How are you?
Sorry. We apologize for how long that went. We know you were waiting.
I got to be honest. I could have sat here and listened to Gord all night.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
It's amazing. Like I'm sitting here and I'm watching, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going anywhere. He was keeping me awake. It was good.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's so good.
Antonio Maleka, of course, he is going to be our fish du jour chef, our in-house chef every week moving forward. He is going to start showing us different recipes, how to prepare fish, how to cut up fish, how to enjoy fish. It's all going to be about fish preparation, and we're excited about that. Tonight, however, as he mentioned last week when he was on, the most important part about food preparation is not in the pan, is not in the oil or condiments or anything else. It's about the knife.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was mentioning, a lot of people always ask me, if they're going to be preparing a shore lunch or what they should, pack in their tackle box or in their bag when they're going ready to go out fishing and hopefully have a shore lunch. And I always say one of the most important things to bring with you is obviously one of these. So right here, I don't know if you can see it too well. It's just a basic steel, and you can get some that are diamond coated. And really, this is probably the most important thing you should have in your tackle box if you're planning on having a shore lunch. And the reason is like I said before, all these anglers that go out there, they'll keep their knives in their tackle boxes all year round. You know, they'll go out and they'll buy themselves a fillet knife and they'll keep it in there. They'll use it once or twice. It'll be razor sharp right out of the package. But what happens, Ange and Pete, is that, you know, as it collects moisture, obviously it's going to be wet. You're going to want to clean your knife off. You're going to put that back in its case into your tackle box. Well, what's going to happen? It's probably going to rust. So, you know, if you can take one of these with you, or and always be prepared when you go out, I'm telling you right now, it'll make cleaning the fish a lot easier. Another thing I wanted to talk about too is the size of the knife. It always depends on the species of fish you're going after, obviously. And I notice a lot of fishermen, they like to pack small knives because they can fit easier in their tackle box. I mean, don't be shy to buy yourself a big knife, especially a fillet knife. It doesn't always have to go in your tackle. You can take it with you on the boat. You can put it in your knapsack, whatever you're planning on doing. And I'll tell you right now, it will help you clean fish, even smaller fish, believe it or not, a lot easier.
So, Antonio, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying size does matter in this case.
Absolutely, Ange. It really does, believe it or not. Like I've seen guys bring out these micro knives when they're cleaning perch and crappie and stuff like that. Even guys buying these little electric knives. The electric knives do work really great, but you know, if you're going out in the middle of nowhere and you're fishing, you got to rely on that electric knife to turn on. You drop your batteries, whatnot, whatever it is. They do work great, but you know, I always rely on my good old knife. And I have one here that I could show you. This is a 6-inch knife. It's a fillet knife. You can see it has a good bend to it. This is Japanese. You need to have a Japanese knife in your knife kit. But you know, obviously being a chef, it's a preferable knife I like to use. But again, this knife here will work with walleye, perch, black crappie, and believe it or not, even but so don't be afraid.
Damn.
So again, I'm not saying you have to tackle, but you're planning to go out there and do a shore lunch. You're afraid to bring yourself a prop. Bring something here. You can easily run your knife, sharpen it up. All you got to do is take your knife, hold the steel firm in front of you, run a straight edge on the side, just like so, and you'll see you don't have to go crazy, just like this, and you'll see you'll always have a razor sharp edge, and it will help you when you're cleaning that fish.
Is there an angle that you use, Antonio, for that? Because that'd be a key.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I like to do is, if you can see here, I'm holding my knife on a slight angle, and as I'm bringing it down, I'm pulling away. A lot of people, you know, you see them moving their chef knife coming down like really. You're feeling your hand. So what's happening is the knife's straight down, and close to their hand, they're going to lose their thumb when that happens. So the best thing to do, slight angle, bring it and pull away. And when you're coming down, again, holding it on that straight, slight angle, bringing it away. And I'll tell you, you will feel like even a knife right out of the box, you will definitely feel a tight edge. And that will help you when you're going through, piercing through the skin when you're cleaning your fish. And another thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, if you are cleaning a bigger fish, let's say a salmon or a trout, you're going to want to have the backbone, a strong backbone on your knife, because you're going to be wanting to push down on that spine from the top end of the fish. A knife like this will get you to the top end of the fish, no problem. If you start from the top, you
Damn.
feature, because it's very important to have a strong backbone when you're holding on to, you know, a 15-pound fish and you want to slide right off. This here is not going to do the trick.
Wow.
There's something interesting.
That is really interesting. I would have never thought a knife like that would be used in cleaning a fish. We're always of that mind frame, but it's got to be a fillet knife, right? But that makes so much sense.
Getting back to that angle, is there too much of an angle? Can you get
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm holding my steel and I'm coming in on a sharp angle, again, you don't want to come diagonally across, because all you're going to do is really dull your knife.
Right.
So you really need to create some sort of angle when you're coming down your steel to create that edge. And I'll tell you, these steels are great, but they also wear down as well. You know, a lot of people will run their knives on a steel and keep their steel for years. And like I said, this one's diamond coated, but eventually over time, I will have to replace this as well. Again, a whetstone. Some people like to use whetstones when they're cleaning bigger fish. I do have a sashimi knife that I like to use when I'm cleaning fish, and this is just a basic knife I like to use after the fish is clean and filleted, and I'm taking just some, you know, if it's yellowtail or tuna. Again, I like to have a strong knife in my hand because, again, it's the most important tool when you're planning on going out and cooking the fish, having a shore lunch. The last thing you want to do is destroy that fish. And having these proper sharp knives, I'm telling you right now, it will definitely make a big difference.
So those 3 knives you got right there, what kind of a total price tag do we have on those 3 knives? I want to know. I have to know.
Oh, you don't want to know.
Come on, tell me, please.
I'll put it to you this way. If I were to have to put my knives up against my fishing rods, I would probably say my knives are about triple the price.
No kidding. I knew
You know, it's a shock. You know, we've got sticker shock now, obviously, but I guess it's all about priorities, right? Because you know, Pete, you have no qualms at spending $3,000 or $4,000 for your electronics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No big deal. But there's a lot of people say, "What? Are you crazy?" Russell wants to know: do you ever use ceramic sharpeners?
Yeah, I have used a ceramic sharpener before. You know, when I would say probably about 10 to 15 years ago, that's all I was using was a ceramic sharpener. And they're really great because you could even get smaller ones where they have them sort of on a V diagonal where you can run your knife straight across it.
I was going to ask you that one.
And you know what? They do work good. There are some nice small compact ones that you can put, again, if you're traveling and you know you're going to be having a shore lunch, or if you're going to be catching fish and cleaning it back at camp. They are quite useful. I preferred, as I ventured on in my career, I preferred using the diamond coated steels. Again, I don't use my knives just for fish, so it does create a lot better, sharper edge on my knives. But here's the thing, going back to that question with the ceramic, Japanese knives are very, very thin. And, you know, sometimes with the ceramic sharpeners, if you're running a thin blade down, it could actually damage and chip the knife. So again, I prefer to use the diamond coated for my Japanese knives, but I would definitely recommend using the ceramic one, especially if you have a Henkel or you know, any kind of Swiss made knife. They'll work great. And again, they're nice, small, and compact. You can put them anywhere.
Will that sharpener you have work on a Rapala, you know, the old $20 Rapala fishing knife, that diamond coated steel you have? No problem?
Absolutely. You could take any knife and use one of these. And again, when you're applying that pressure, a lot of people will think the harder you tug onto that diamond blade, it's going to get sharper. It's really not. Sometimes I even like to take the knife, again, I'll show you, and just slightly go down on the angle just on one side, and I'm not even applying any pressure at all. And if you see the angle, I'm not sure if you can see it good, but what I'm doing is I'm literally letting the knife just gently slide on an angle down that steel. And again, you don't need to apply so much pressure because all you're going to do is actually damage your knife.
Interesting.
Very cool.
I was going to ask you, that was going to be one of my questions. Can you wear out a sharpener? And you answered already. And the reason I was going to ask you is because I discovered that in my own kitchen, my sharpener just wasn't working anymore. And I was blaming everything, including me, because I couldn't get an edge going. And then it dawned on me, I wonder if maybe this thing is, and I'd had it for years. And I went and bought a new one, and all my knives just, boom, came to life.
Nice. Magic.
Yeah. And that's I said, wow, this really does wear out.
What about those little belt sanders? You know, the little little tiny belt sander and all that kind of stuff. Are they any good?
Yeah, the belt sanders are okay. I mean, it's always going to be, you know, personal preference when it comes to sharpening knives. Like I said, I've been a chef for over 20 years, and I have my own way of sharpening knives that works for me. You know, when we're on set, we're butchering a lot of meats, and I think my knives, especially my knives, the bigger knives, always have to be razor sharp. And those belt sanders are great. But again, for me personally, nothing beats the diamond plated steel. Again, a lot of Japanese knives are great with using the water stones I've seen, but it takes hours. It really takes hours. And a lot of chefs will spend hours. It's our profession, you know, taking care of our knives. It's like any construction worker that goes to work with their tool belt. You know, our knives are like our tools. We need them every day. They got to be razor sharp. And especially with the volume of, you know, butchering and cleaning from fish to meat, they got to stay razor sharp. And I'm telling you, it will always be, if you are planning on going out and preparing your fish, it will always be the #1 tool you'll need, because you will not be able to clean a fish without your knife.
True enough.
Let's,
Good point.
let's take a few of these questions here. And what happens when you get a chip? This is George Cassie wants to know, what happens when you get a chip on your knife, which we often do. Can you use a sharpener to get through that problem?
So what happens with that, and that's a great question because it does happen a lot. In this case, I don't think you're going to be able to, it's almost like a hockey skate. If you think of a hockey skate, a lot of these skates, you know, they'll get chips and they'll get chip edges. You could take it to the sharpener. He's going to run it down, you know, one of those electric sharpeners, and they can actually grind out the edge, and you won't have those chips. But with any kind of steel or any kind of home sharpening tool, more than likely you won't be able to get that out. So I would suggest taking it to a knife sharpening place, or they even have mobile sharpeners now, which are great. They're great. They come do your lawnmower, they'll come do anything that has a blade, your scissors, everything, and they'll actually be able to get that out for you. But you will lose, and a big reason why I don't like using the knife surfaces is because you do over time lose a lot. And you know, your butcher's knife or your chef's knife will end up being a fillet knife over 6 months.
Yeah.
How much they'll grind it down. And I mean, that's why I like, as long as you keep a straight edge on your knife, it'll last you forever.
My dad had a fillet knife, one of those little 4-inch propellant knives that looked like an ice pick by the time it was done. It was the funniest looking thing I've ever seen, and he kept it forever. I don't know why he kept it. He kept trying to sharpen it.
Dean Talbot wants to know, do you ever use one of those leather straps, you know, that the barbers used to use?
Yeah. Great question. No, I've never used a leather strap. No. I mean, they're very popular. Especially these times, a lot of chefs, they're coming in, they got these leather straps and they got these really cool leather aprons now, and they got these really fancy knife bags and stuff. I still go to work with my my old toolbox, and I got all my knives in there. But no, I haven't to answer that question, I haven't used it. No.
I think it'd be great for outdoors people, especially if you're doing any, you know, outback stuff, you know, flying in, portaging in, or camping out. Having a strip of leather to do your sharpening, you could tie it onto to a tree and just have at it, right? And let's be honest, there was nothing more. I mean, talk about sharp, a barber's edge. Holy,
for sure, absolutely.
So, like, tough question. A good old Calvin, he wants to know, what is the best steel composition for a knife? Is there a definitive answer to this?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't think so. I mean, there's so many companies and there's so many different types of steels out there that and again, I've gone through hundreds of steels over my career, and again, I don't think there's a real answer to that question, but what I can say is, find a steel that works for you. Test it out on your knives at home. It's very simple, and one way that you can test to see if that steel is working or you're sharpening it correctly is literally just grab a piece of paper and just run your knife across the paper before and after you sharpen your knife on that steel, and you'll know right away if you're doing it properly and if your steel is good quality.
Another point people might not realize is that stainless steel does rust. And Antonio said that it gets rusty in the tackle box. People think
Absolutely.
that stainless steel doesn't rust, but it rusts. Okay, and the cheaper the stainless, the more it'll rust too. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely, and the worst part is trying to get the rust off of your knife.
Oh God.
With a steel, it's an absolute disaster, and all you're going to do is end up damaging your steel.
Exactly.
John wants to know, is the steel used for the final edge, or would you also use it for a super dull knife? I don't think I understand that question.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what he's asking is if you can sharpen is it sharpening a steel knife on a steel? Is that what the question was?
That's why I say, you said you understood it, Pete?
Yeah, because I mean, you look at a lot of those little V cutters that you have. You have a coarse one and you have a fine one. You start out on the coarse to get it down to a certain level. Then you take the fine one and you do it, to do your finishing touches.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, those wheels, like I said, they are quite handy to have. They do work really well. It's just over time, I think for your money, it's better investing in like a proper steel. But again, they do work and they work great. And it also depends on how much cleaning and cooking you're doing at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and like I said, most anglers will go out there and maybe do a lunch or a short lunch twice or three times a year, or and I'll be honest, in Florida, in the Keys, every day we were coming back and cleaning fish, and we were cleaning, from yellowtail, again, for tuna, mahi, and all these different species. And you should see these guys sharpen their knives when we get back off the water. And I'm watching these guys clean fish like crazy. And I can only imagine having one of those little V sharpeners when they're cleaning hundreds of fish a day, and some of the steels they have are like 16 inches long, and their knives are 12, 14 inches long. So again, I think it all depends on how much you're going to use that knife and planning it. But definitely those little V things are quite handy to have on you.
I was more looking at that as a comparison when they have the coarse V versus the fine, because I think his question was a dull knife versus a finishing edge on the same steel that you're using.
Right.
So I think that's more what he was saying.
Okay, I understand that. Sorry, I'm just trying to read the question there.
So can you use a steel to sharpen a really dull knife?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can use a steel on a razor sharp knife. You can use a steel on a dull knife. You're never going to bring that knife up to, like I said, when it comes from the manufacturer. All you want to do with your steel is the maintenance of your knife, keeping a straight edge all the time. Because again, especially cleaning fish, you're always going to be running into bones. And even that goes with meat. You're always going to be, if you're cutting chicken or cleaning chicken, you're always going to be hitting bones, and that's what's going to create your knife to either dull or chip. So if you create that edge and you're always sharpening your knife and you're always on top of it, and again, if you have a really, really dull knife, maybe not start with using your steel. Maybe go out and get it properly sharpened first, but then it's about the maintenance.
Right on. I just you see Steve Vukovic's comment down there, guys. Just in case you didn't, Eddie Van Halen passed away today from
I heard that.
65
Terrible.
years old. What a thank you for that, Stevie. I was going to mention it, and I thought I don't know about it, because Eddie was a huge influence on a lot of people. So
they're all starting to drop off, aren't they?
I know. 65 years old. The guy was he was in shape, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, but he had throat cancer, right? And he had a hard life too. He liked the booze. So
Giovanni Sulo wants to know, what's your favorite knife in your collection? If you could only take one of those.
I'm gonna have to go with. I'm probably gonna have to go with a shun. And shuns are it's a Japanese made knife. You could buy them here. They do have them even online. You can buy them. And again, they are Japanese made. And again, and when I'm in the kitchen, I'm not just cleaning fish. We're cleaning meat, chopping vegetables, and so many different knives and so many. There's just so many. And for me, I like to have the steel that actually I can show you here of a shun knife here. You'll notice that the steel will run right along and continue into the shaft of the knife. So when it comes to balance, again, you can see it comes right through. So it's actually one straight piece. And for me, I like to use these Japanese knives, and it's all about balance for me. They are quite light as well, which is nice. But sometimes being light when you're holding a knife is dangerous. When you're chopping really, really quick and it's really light, you can literally cut your finger off. So it is dangerous. So I do like to have a little bit of weight to it. And again, there's also, if I were to take a North American knife that I think that is quite popular around here, I shouldn't say North American, still European made, but Henkel makes a great knife. And again, you can find them anywhere. And I probably used Henkel for a good 5 years before I switched over to the Japanese. And for the price, you can't beat it.
Okay, here's what I've just come up with, Pete. Maybe you'll back me up on this one. I think this is all too complicated for us. I think there's just too much to learn.
I like it already. I like where you're going.
Way too many tools, and we have enough problems with what we're doing now. I vote for bringing Antonio on every shoot that we do from here on in that requires preparation of fish. Boom. Problem solved.
I agree.
I wish it was all that easy, eh? Life.
It'd be so nice. It'd be so nice.
Buddy, I want to thank you for sharing that stuff with us. I look forward to getting some cooking seeds done. I just want to before we end this, I want to reach out to Dean Talbot, who earlier on asked, I believe it was Dean, he asked about getting more recipes on cooking wild, and I just wanted to let folks know that segment is open to everybody. In other words, if you've got a recipe that you'd like to share with the rest of us on food preparation, whether it's fish or just wild foods, by all means, send it into us. We'd love to post your stuff. It's not just about what we want. It's also about what you want to share. So by all means, send them out. We'll collect them, post them. We'll
let Antonio critique them.
Yeah. Well, it would be wonderful if, some of the guests can share their recipes, and I would love to do it as well. Like, I can actually do it, share their recipes, and make the dish come to life, and people would love that.
Excellent. Is there anywhere that you have, Antonio, that you can send people to learn about knives themselves? Is there anything you have out there yet, or do you have anything on a website? Or
yeah, I mean, you can visit gourmetcraftingcatering.com. That's the my business, and basically you will see a lot of pictures. There's a lot of information of a lot of the food style that we use, from knives to food, and you can get some information there. Also, you could always email me. There's an email link on the website, info@gourmetcraftingcatering.com. You can just drop me an email of any questions that you have about before you're going to purchase a knife. Also, if you need good prices on knives, I can get really, really good prices on these knives. And I can get them. Yeah, absolutely. And also with recipes, don't be shy to drop me a line if you have a question about a recipe. I was watching the segments there on carp, and there was a lot of talk about, with the carp eating, and I do have some great recipes for carp that I actually gathered from the last time that we were talking, and you brought it up. So I did some research over the past week about carp, and there's some really, really nice stuff that I'd love to try.
Perfect. I look forward to seeing those for sure. My friend, we've kept you up way too long. You should be in bed. Have an early wake-up call.
3 a.m. wake up.
Oh, good God. Thank you so much. You just add so much to the program, and I know the audience appreciates it. We certainly appreciate it, and we look forward to sharing some of that food with you.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and it's always a pleasure.
Right on, buddy.
Hey, Antonio. Wow. we're going to a new record length on this episode.
That's a new record for sure. Jordan and Mike have already gone home. They're probably left us up here alone.
Oh my God. I get bad. You people don't know. You can't keep me up this late, for God's sakes.
Oh God, that's
what a wonderful program. I love programs where we all come out of this. It's a win-win for everybody. You know, when we are able to learn and share so much information like we did tonight with all of our special guests and our audience, it's fantastic.
You got that right, mister. You got that right, mister.
Want to just some last-minute cleanup thing?
Yeah, very quickly. On our website, we have a new top 5, or not. Actually, this is more than a top 5. This is our top New Brunswick shore fishing spots. Just came out. Jeff Wilson wrote that up, and it's not just a top 5. There's a lot of spots he's given away on that one, which is really nice because the access in there, you know what I mean, to a beautiful province in New Brunswick. There's lots of access to areas you probably never fished before in your life or never heard of. So if you check out our blog, look for Jeff Wilson under our My Outdoor Life column, you'll see his piece on shore fishing. Ugly Pike has put a new episode 74 with Mike Parker. So they got a new podcast up there that we're sharing. Tomorrow we have another one coming up, Clearwater versus Dirty Water on our site. So please check that out. Yep. And then of course the new polls will be starting, et cetera, et cetera. So
do we know what the new poll is? Tomorrow's poll. How long could you survive alone in the wild?
Woo! I like that.
Oh, what a great
that. Well, let's see how tough you are in this poll, people.
Is it a multiple choice? Do we know?
It is. I think it's like a 1 day, a 1 week, or a month or longer, I believe is what it is.
So all right. So let me throw this out there. Let's be honest though, okay? Don't just try and be the hero and say, I can do 30 days. No, honestly, ask yourself, do some soul searching.
Mm-hmm.
How long could you survive if we airlifted you to northern someplace and dropped you in the middle of the woods?
12 and a half minutes.
If you're lucky.
No. But luckily, my whole life, I have hunted and fished. So I think that gives me a little bit of an advantage. I know I can sneak up on certain animal species. I know I can take care of somehow. I should be able to do better than the person that's never hunted or fished in their life. I think I can do better than that. So I'm going to say way longer than a week, but I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be you can live, you don't have to eat for a week. You'd still be alive if they air back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it's a psychological thing that's probably more difficult than the physical thing.
I'd say I could give myself that month or longer. I wouldn't go much longer. I think I could do a month if I had to.
Yeah. What I would say is if it was of my own choice and my own doing, I think I could go a month easily without any problems at all. Actually, I think I could do it. If it was an emergency situation where something happened and now I don't know how long I'm going to be out here, I don't know how I'm going to survive, I have no plan. I don't know because I've never been in that situation.
Yeah. And you have no Starbucks out there either, right?
And what am I going to do without coffee and stuff?
You know what I'm saying? You're done, but you're toast. You're history.
Anyways, I'll go answer those questions. I have no problem with that.
That's a good point.
Also, I want to remind folks, if you enjoy what we're doing, if you take stuff away from all of these episodes, if it's something that we would be tickled pink if you would share. Let's put it that way. We want to bring as many people in on board on these programs as we possibly can, and the only way we're going to do that, it's not like we have $1 billion advertising budget. The only way that this is going to grow is with your help, and so we'll keep doing it. We'll keep giving it to you, but it's a two-way street. We need some of that heavy lifting being done by the audience as well. Please share. There's a million different ways. Follow us, like us, subscribe, get our YouTube channel growing. I mean, all of the above. And then we'll just do this forever. The hell with the pandemic. Who needs it? We got
pandemic.
All right, folks. We'll talk to you next Tuesday. It's going to be another jam-packed episode. We promise not to keep you awake for this long, though, if we can possibly help it. Take care. Be safe. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
What a fantastic fishery. You got to come. You do.
That is a walleye from Picton, man. Oh.
It's a giant.
Yes. There's nothing more exciting than coming to a place and catching walleye that are over 12 pounds. Oh. Yeah, baby.
That's a big walleye.
That's what you get here, folks. That's what you get here.